The boy stared as riders on horseback thundered toward him, and he warned two girls, "They're coming." One nodded like she got it, while the other promised, "I'll watch over the young lady." The little girl yanked at her pant leg, screamed that he was her father, then blurted, "Good luck," while the other girl shrieked for him to destroy them. He swore he'd do anything she commanded. Then the other guy snapped his power to compress the earth, right as the mounted man let out a blood-curdling scream when someone suddenly popped into existence out of nowhere. He lunged at him with a spear, but the swordsman calmly danced in with the shy sword and that light step technique, flicking it into his head until he crumpled and blacked out. Then the armored man stepped in and declared, "It's done, swordsman." Japan. This guy trudged through a loud city, eyes glued to his phone, mumbling that the end of next week was coming and the year would be over. Like, seriously, how dull is that? Then, boom, he got a message. He asked, and the answer hit him like a lightning bolt. The message told him to want to go to another world, and before he even processed it, he stepped out to cross the road on a red light. Someone screamed at him to stop because that place was pure danger. He whirled around in shock at the voice, but he never made it away. A truck slammed into him. He sprawled on the ground, ears tuned to the screams, while people shouted that something awful had happened. A high school kid had been slammed by a truck, an ambulance was called, and the doctor confirmed the nightmare. His bones were broken. He couldn't even feel his own body, so he slammed his eyes shut. Then a man loomed over him, staring him down, and when he snapped awake, he bolted up and screamed, "I'm dead." The man nodded and said, "Yeah, it was that guy," and the moment he started waving his arms, they were still whole. Then he stared at the man and said he clearly remembered a truck right in front of him. The man flashed a huge grin, and the boy blurted out, loud as thunder, "Who are you and where are we now?" The man swung his head around, and there it was, the city sprawled below. He yelled that he was in a city and floating on cloud nine. Then a man swung a cane at him and barked, "Shut it," too loud, warning that one wrong move and he'd go tumbling. The boy blared, "Don't hit me with that stick," and the man stared him down, grumbling that kids these days are straight up rude, then snapped, "Tell me, do you even know God is standing right in front of you?" He said he was fine with zero emotion, and the man snapped, "What's wrong with your reaction?" Then the guy answered, "My grandma's last rule was simple, never trust anyone who claims they're God." The man paused, then admitted it was true, because the second he told her, she snapped back that he was just an old liar, and the guy couldn't believe how his granny could hit him with that answer. The guy blurted, wide-eyed, "Yep, Grandma, if you end up facing God, you'll stop calling it nonsense, because I'm definitely God." Then he shot back, "So tell me, how did you meet me by mistake?" God dropped into the chair, said no, and told them to snap back to the real problem, then paused, stared into the air, and admitted, "Yeah, that's on me." God went silent, and the guy let out a shocked sigh like his whole world just tilted. The man claimed his name was Sun Sui, and the boy just shrugged, "Yeah, whatever." Then the god fumbled through his words and admitted the name didn't sound like something a teenager would use, and that he'd messed up by blowing out the candle of his life. We barked in anger that it was time for him to retire. Then God snapped back, saying he'd be here forever. The boy shot back, annoyed, grinning that he was happy and felt insanely lucky. The man went dead silent and stared him down. After a tense pause, God awkwardly blurted out that his mistake meant Sans was getting shipped to another world, and Sans went completely dumbfounded. He bounced on his feet, shouting that this was the best ending of his whole life, until God said it was good and that he understood, and the man finally tore into the box to reveal the paper and ink. God promised him power so he wouldn't die, and told him he could pick anything he wanted. Sansui grinned and begged, "Then let me choose whatever power I want." God snatched the paper in his hands and flashed a confident grin. Yes, he could say it and make it happen. Sansui burst out in pure joy, shouting that he wanted to be the strongest man on earth. God told him to stop, and he snapped, asking Sansui why he wasn't ashamed to say something like that. The boy grinned and admitted it was true, because he'd been dreaming of this since he was a kid. God stumbled out a shaky "okay," then scribbled the words on paper and told Sansui to take the letter, because someday God would meet the person it was meant for, and this was his chance to hand it over. God told him this man would be his teacher, and the boy let out a shocked sigh. Then the man promised, "As long as Sun Sui reaches the top, I'll guide him all the way." The boy yelped in shock. What was God even getting at? God said, "You've got to grind hard if you want to grow strong. He can't let this letter slip. Now it's time to move." God slammed a kick into the clouds, asterisk crack, and they split into two while Sansui shrieked, begging him to wait. God just shoved him, and the boy shot off into the air, Sansui's screams ripping through the sky, until God simply waved like it was goodbye for good. The boy stumbled into the forest, swearing he'd been dumped here without a single instruction, while Sansui clutched God's warning in his mind that he must not forget to deliver the letter. He said the letter story was the biggest thing he'd ever told. Then a weird noise snapped him into panic. "What is that? Is someone here right now?" A guy perched on a tree branch and said, "Yeah, I feel uneasy, but wow, meeting someone from another world is amazing." Sansui stared at him in shock, thinking, how on earth was he holding his balance on something that tiny? The boy leapt off the branch and strode up to Senussi, sizing him up like a hawk, then telling him he didn't seem dangerous at all, and firing off a question. What was he hunting for in this forest? Sansui stared at him, stunned, speechless. Then the guy dropped it. If he was right, it would take exactly 7 minutes to lock onto her. Sansui blinked hard and gawked. "Wait, my teacher." The boy lined in, curious as hell, asking what it all meant, while Sansui instantly figured this kid must be his teacher, had to hand him the letter, and had to obey God's command. We all fumbled out the letter, shoved it into his hands, and told him, "Go on, read it." He shot back, "What is this?" Then he unfolded the paper and dove into the words, reading every line like it mattered. He pulled a grimace and asked, "Do you want to be the strongest in the world, or are you stuck with a head full of noise?" Then God basically went, "Shake out that nonsense, get it out of you." Sansui's face burned as shame hit him like a truck. Then the guy asked what he knew and who Kenza was, and when Sansui stared back, he realized the guy didn't think he had a clue. He let out a heavy sigh and told him, "It's fine, consider yourself my disciple." Sansui froze at that, then awkwardly blurted out his thanks, while the boy just waved it off and said he'd learn the hermit's style. The guy flashed a huge grin and warned that the training would be brutal, like he was telling Sansui to brace right now. Sansui froze in shock, realizing he wasn't joking. He told them straight up he didn't think he had a single drop of talent, and Sun Tzu just wore a sad little face without arguing, while the guy chuckled and said that sure, in 500 years he'd probably be the strongest man on earth. Sansui blurted in pure shock, "I need 500 years, but the truth hit hard, he'd be dead long before that. No shortcut could make him the strongest any faster," and the guy just stared at him, stunned. He told them there's no shortcut to getting stronger, but if they study with him, they don't have to fear for their lives, because 500 years will vanish in the blink of an eye. With tears in his eyes, he begged us for one thing, a girl and authority, so he smiled and confessed. He's been studying for thousands of years and still can't finish, like there's no end to the lessons. While the boy was springing from branch to branch, he suddenly spotted an old house, and in a flash he landed on the roof, slipped inside, and found a wooden sword waiting there. Sansui came barreling up to him, lungs burning, shouting, "Master." After sprinting through the forest for what felt like forever, and as the guy finally caught his breath, he swung his sword onto his shoulder and grinned, like he'd finally made it. Sansui panted hard and blurted out how the kid managed to leap onto the ends of those branches. The boy rubbed his chin and said he pulled it off using that technique that makes your body lighter. The master let out a laugh, grinning like he already knew the moment would be here soon, and Sansui, drained to the bone, muttered that he was sure it would be a long, long time before that ever happened. The boy shoved the weapon into his hands and told him, "Take it." Sansui blinked and asked what it was. "Just a wooden sword," and the master promised his training would be easy. Every single day at sunrise he'd grab it and swing. He swore he'd keep swinging it till the sun went down, no stop, no end, not unless he said so. Then Sensui stared at the sword in shock and realized he'd have to swing it endlessly too. The master grinned and asked what they were going to begin. Then he planted himself with his wooden sword and said there was only one thing that mattered: dig in and keep training no matter what. The kid said he'd never forget it, and one day he'd rise as the strongest, and that's exactly when we realized this was the start of his 500-year training. He kept reasoning it out until the truth hit him. Life in this world was brutal. So he started training every single day with his master, Shriboku, and those first years were pure misery. He'd slash into the fight the moment the sun crept up, keep going till the night swallowed the sky, then collapse into sleep only to wake up for dawn and start training all over again. And at the beginning, hunger was his constant enemy. After a while, hunger finally started to fade, and for his master, guys like him didn't need food at all, just a little haze to keep living. They don't need worldly food because in his mind he had no other choice. So he kept training day after day, soaking up every new lesson the master drilled into him. He never even clocked it. His old school uniform had already turned into the master's kinagashi, and somehow years vanished like magic. Before he knew it, 500 years had stacked up, and still the distance between him and the master wouldn't shrink by a single inch. Even though he knew he wasn't ready, intruders slipped into the forest. Sensui snapped to the master and screamed that someone was here. Then two boys sprang from branch to branch in a blur. Seiboku blurted out, tense as hell, that nobody had stepped into this forest since he arrived. But Sun Sui shot back that he could feel two frail intruders out there, and even the wolves closing in. The master snapped back that they had to move, now, so they sprinted to the clearing and found the wolves tearing into a man, while the girl threw herself over the child, shielding them with her own body. Seiboku snapped that they were already late, and the boys dove into the clearing as the wolves burst off in every direction. while Sansui cradled the tiny baby in his arms. The boy blurted to the master, shaking, that it was fate, or something like it, but the kid still lived, and Seiboku slumped, saying it was the exact opposite. This was a huge problem for them. He told the boy to listen close and explained why he never should have been raised, and Sun Sui let out a startled sigh as he stared down at the kid cradled in his arms. The kid snapped his eyes open at the sound of voices, and Sansui stammered that he didn't have the immortal power of chi, only for the master to confirm he's right. Seiboku swore he could feel the magic thrumming from the child, so becoming a sage didn't sound out of reach anymore, but there was no need to rush it. He could just raise him right there in the human world. The kid grabbed Sun Tizu's finger, then the boy blurted, "He's right, the master is right." Sane Boku leaned in and declared that his student, Sun Tzu, was about to step into the world of people, where he'd earn his wisdom and prove himself as a swordsman. The master told him to really lock into this part of his training, and he had no doubt. All those 500 years mastering this place, plus every technique the master drilled into him, forged him into something even stronger. Saimboku said loud and sure that he'd raise the child like his own, so when we agreed and he said he understood, the master's face lit up with a huge grin, telling him he'd hand everything over to his student, because he was absolutely, insanely proud. Sainsui gazed at the kid and let out a gentle smile, and Sainboku snapped, "You've been handed the life of a human. Until you find them a real home and raise them right, you don't get to come back here." The master grinned wide and told Sansui not to sweat it, just a quick moment for them. Sansui puffed out his chest and swore he'd handle his future with confidence, no matter what, and he'd never stain the master's good name. The boy blurted that he was going, and the master just nodded like that was perfect. Sansui sprang onto a branch and vanished in a blink, and when he landed in front of that breathtaking view, he told the kid, "This is where our lives together start." What? Once Wei caught himself thinking that and realized just how much power he'd truly gained, he couldn't help but wonder what the human world would offer him. Then he straight up declared, "I've got to find a job first so this kid has something to eat." What? Sun Sui sprinted across the field with a child who suddenly erupted into loud cries, and when he slammed on the brakes, he stared in shock. Then the boy anxiously demanded to know what had happened. The baby shoved Sensui away and kept crying, so he leaned in and asked if she was hungry, but he had no breast milk, and getting it would be a nightmare. Sansui lifted his head and pointed at a village in the distance, so people were close. When he got nearer, he saw it. That little spirit with hope wasn't alone. It belonged to a baby. The mother had to feed both of them, but he strode up to a woman on a bench and begged her to feed his baby, saying his wife had died, and when he blurted it out, the woman snapped back, asking if it was really true. Sansui admitted it. Yeah, he had zero food to feed the kid, and he had no idea what to do next, so he plastered on an awkward smile and told her, "Look, right now I've got absolutely nothing." Sansui shyly asked her if she'd be okay with feeding his child too, and the woman didn't hesitate. She agreed right away, and Sansui thanked her like crazy because her help meant everything. The woman scooped up the girl and started feeding her right away, then snapped to Sensui that there was zero paid work around here, and because he looked so young, they'd have a better shot if they headed for the capital. Sensui nodded and said, "To the capital." The woman pointed them down the exact road that would spit them out at the capital in just a few days, so they had to follow her directions. Then, snatching the girl from them, she muttered that she should have already eaten by now and shoved her straight into Sun Sui's hands. Once the woman handed the girl to Sansui, she ordered him to stay put here, and Sansui instantly knew this wasn't some casual errand. She wanted him waiting for her. He'd lived 500 years in this world, but he'd never once stepped outside the forest, so he had zero clue how anything in this place worked. Sun Sui shot a furious thought through his head. He was stuck raising this kid no matter what, and as the girl in his arms squirmed and grinned, he watched her awkward little moves and smiled right back. Sansui snapped back from his thoughts, and the woman apologized for making him wait. Then she thrust a bag of goat's milk into his hands, insisting it was just a little, but it'd carry him all the way to the capital. Sun Sui stared in shock and blurted that he could actually take it, but the woman warned him it would get spoiled even if he didn't, so he thanked her from the bottom of his heart, swearing he'd never forget her kindness. She burst into laughter and tapped Sun Sui on the back, calling him a scoundrel as she said he was finally headed for the capital, and with the girl still steady in his arms, Sun Sui braced himself and nodded along, then swore he'd do things his own way. Sun Sui suddenly leaped a huge distance and burst into a sprint, and the woman watching him nearly crumpled in real shock. While he ran, he told himself he'd have to repay her someday, and not after she's gone, but while she's still alive. Ahead of them, a whole row of horse-drawn carriages rattled along. Sansui sprang up, launched off the roof, and soared over every single one in one wild jump. The nearby men gaped, asking what on earth it was. Maybe a bird. One of the farmers swore it looked like a wind midge, but when it moved, this mage was pure lightning fast. Sansui figured that if he hopped forward with quick, light steps, he'd tear past anyone with regular running. Then, out of nowhere, that hair-raising feeling hit him like a spotlight. Someone was staring at him with murderous intent. Sansui snapped around, convinced he'd found a bloodthirsty man. Then a fair-haired youth in noble clothes shouted for Sansui to stop, freeze, and stand still. Sansui touched down on the ground, spun around, and froze. Right behind him stood a fair-haired youth dressed like royalty, and Sansui fired off, "So that's wind magic. It's my first time seeing something like this." A fair-haired kid in fancy noble clothes yanked a sword from his belt and jabbed it at Sansui, barking that he needed to shut up, because this impudent peasant was out of line. The young man blared in rage, demanding if Sansui even knew whose carriage he'd crushed. No checking, no recognizing the crest. That's a crime all by itself, and Sansui immediately figured he must have stumbled onto a VIP carriage by mistake. The blonde boy said Sansui would have usually lopped off an arm for this, but right now he actually seemed to care about the kid, so the blonde boy figured he might cut him a bit of slack. The blonde youth slid his sword back into its sheath and said that Sansui could finally speak to his mistress straight because she had spared him. Sansui let out a breath of relief, then asked for permission to apologize for what he'd done. The young man snapped, "Follow me," and then sprinted straight to the carriage he'd just leaped onto, where a young girl in fine noble clothes was already sitting. She spotted that the young man had dragged Sansui straight to her carriage, called him Brower, and demanded to know if he was the same guy who'd been here before. Brower admitted it was him, and then spun around and told Sansui to apologize right now. We gave that awkward smile and said he really was sorry. Then he admitted he'd come straight from the countryside, so he didn't mean it and probably stepped on the carriage earlier without even realizing it. She snapped back that coming from the countryside and not even knowing manners was basically savagery. Sansui wasn't any better than a wild monkey, even dressed in rags instead of real clothes. She leaned in, voice trembling, and asked if he finally understood everything now, because next time he'd better not disrespect their family crest, and if he was thinking he could slide by, she made it clear. Since Sansui was the child's father, she'd accept his apology, for now. Sansui gave a shaky laugh, but the girl snapped her eyes to him and went quiet. Then Brower watched as that sharp stare sent her springing up from her seat, and he shot his hand out to help her down. The girl stood right in front of Sansui and demanded his name. Then he grinned and said, "Shikuro Sansui." She mouthed it again and again, syllable by syllable, and when she finished, she let out a shocked, "I've never heard anything like that." What? She locked her eyes on Sansui and told him straight up. His life right now was falling apart, so he should come to her mansion, pass her test, and she'd hand him a job. The girl smirked and shot him, "Does that sound okay?" And Sansui's eyes lit up as he grinned, asking her if it was really fine. Brower froze at her words, staring in shock, then snapped, "Wait, let me hear her proposal first." Sansui figured she must be amazing, and when the girl looked him in the eyes, she introduced herself as Dewey, warning him, not asking, that she'd soon be his mistress and praying he'd remember her. Bauer snapped at the girl, saying someone with her status had no business getting close to a guy like that, but she cut him off hard, already decided everything. She told Sansui to show her his palm and he nodded, no hesitation. Sansui extended his hand, and she murmured the same old rhyme, swearing that his grip looked like it had been forged long ago for a sword. Even though Sansui looked the same age as her, Sansui couldn't shake the feeling that he might be one of the oldest people alive on this whole planet. Yeah, his age, tell them that and they'd never buy it, so he shut up about it, because that's exactly what an adult would do. The girl snapped her gaze away and fired a question at Brower. Had he realized that not a single grain of magic was coming off this man at all? Brower was so shocked he blurted out how he even pulled off that jump, and the girl's eyes lit up. She told him that, basically, he'd been born with a rare kind of magic. Sansui totally thought he was something rare and special, like, what are they even talking about? He had no clue, so for now, he kept his mouth shut. One day, his master leaned in and told him, somewhere else in the world, magic is everywhere, but that doesn't mean just anyone can wield it. In this world, a whopping 99% of everyone can wield magic, but the last 1% can't cast a single spell, because they're just too weak to even kick their magic powers into gear. Still, these people can pull off the same magic effects, just not with simple tricks like everyone else. They rely on tangled, hard-earned methods like their special rituals and ceremonies. Sansui kept mulling it over. Maybe his sage tricks still fit into the same bucket, because that so-called rare magic is basically the label for every human ability and skill that isn't magic. Dewey lifted her chin and said Sansui could pull it off if he actually learned how to use it. Sansui shot his head up, grinned, and told her that as far as he was concerned, her giving him the chance was more than enough. At the kingdom's capital, horse hooves thundered and the gates towered. Sun Tizoe stared in shock and blurted that those portcullises were absolutely enormous. The city's capital blew him away. He whipped his head toward the girl in his arms and asked, "Do you feel the same?" Brower stared at Sansui with a deadpan face and quizzed Dewey. Didn't she think this wild guy cared more about the bars than the woman? With a shaky exhale, she insisted it was all fine, just some peasant staring at the fortress walls for the first time, and everything beyond them blasting excitement straight into the hearts of ordinary people. Dewey said it felt like forever since she and Brower had even been anywhere near the capital, and she could only pray her brother and father were still safe. They sent word that they'd finally reached the capital, and Brower couldn't help but grin, saying they'd been dying to meet Dewey. Brower couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was about to come straight from them. After 500 years in another world, he finally felt like he'd landed in the real medieval fantasy, like this world was the only place that could match what he'd been missing. The carriage finally screeched to a stop at the Dewey mansion, and inside, the residents were already lined up, waiting for them. Servants swarmed up to the carriage, and Dewey greeted her mistress and the little Prince Sway. Then she lit up and bragged that she'd just snagged this primate, before demanding they take him and the child straight to their room. Sansui forced out an awkward smile and admitted Dewey still kept calling him a primate, but he shrugged it off, because deep down, she was the kind of person worth giving a chance if you didn't let her words get to you. The girl crumpled in Sansui's arms and started sobbing out of nowhere, so he scooped her up and just stood there frozen, stunned. Dewey's maid snatched the baby girl from Sansui's arms and soothed her right away, and Sansui realized she'd been crying because she probably needed a diaper change. Then he snapped back to himself and hurried to thank the maid for saving the day. The butler strode up to Dewey and Sansui and called out her name, and she snapped her gaze to the steps where her brother and father stood greeting her, like the years had been running for forever. Sansui didn't even realize when he closed the distance to Dewey, until he got a clear look and immediately knew. These two weren't just men, they were the real deal, tall and brutally well-built, like proper noblemen. Dewey yanked Sansui out of her daydream and blurted to her dad and brother that she'd found a wild monkey. He looked like he had some rare kind of magic, and right then she started plotting to make him her bodyguard. Dewey's father shot Sansui a look full of terror, yanked his sword free, and Dewey's brother immediately followed suit with his blade drawn, and when Sansui felt that wave of pure rage wash over him, he couldn't believe it. Dewey and Brower and even the servants at the Dewey mansion slipped away from Sansui in silence. Dewey's brother warned that each step toward his sister might be the step that cost him his life, while Dewey's father insisted this dwarf was only trying to protect his daughter. Sansui yelled for them both to give him 1 second to explain, but Dewey's father and brother sprinted over, screaming and refusing to hear a word. He pleaded for calm, then finally swallowed his pride and admitted he'd have to draw his sword. Sansui snapped forward with a savage lunge, swatting away Dewey's father and brother. He clipped his dad on the chin and drove Dewey's brother back with a hit to the head. Brower's jaw dropped in shock and Dewey just smirked. Then Sansui whipped around, begging forgiveness for what he'd done in his nerve, grimacing as he admitted he'd swung without thinking, but really, was everything okay? Dewey smirked off to the side and realized this was way bigger than anything she'd expected from Sansui. Turns out, she'd somehow landed a seriously impressive person. Father Dewey bellowed at Sansui, demanding to know who she was, why she was here, and how she ended up like this. Then the girl in the maid's arms jolted awake, burst into tears, and the maid rushed in to hush her down. Dewey laid it all out for her father, telling him exactly how she found Sansui, and when he called it a fascinating story, he leaned in and asked why the spy was staying inside their mansion. Dewey promised she'd explain it. Dewey's father snapped his eyes to Sansui and told her straight up, she stayed only because he was holding that child. A tiny crowd waited in the back garden of Dewey's mansion, and Sansui faced a fully armored kid head-on. Father Dewey reminded Sansui, this time aimed at his daughter, the attack would hit out of nowhere, fully armed and ready to ruin everything. Then he leaned in and warned him. Don't trust your weapon to hold up, because it might fail at the worst moment. Dewey's father glanced at Sansui and said he got everything that was happening, so he wouldn't shut down his daughter's communication, because he didn't believe Sansui was a spy just because he stood out so clearly. Dewey's father flashed a sharp grin and said, but if Sansui's moving into this house, then he'd better be able to fight, or we're going to have serious trouble. Sansui stood there telling himself he'd give everything he had, then it hit him. Those people had cooked up the exam just to tear him down. The maid sprinted up to Sansui at Dewey's mansion and demanded, "What's your daughter's name?" And Sansui froze, realizing he'd never even picked one. After a beat, he finally said, "Her name is Rain." The maid spun the girl toward Sansui and told her this would be the last time they'd see each other. She had to say goodbye to her daddy, right now. And Sansui brooded, thinking with a grim twist that even the maids already knew they were coming to kill him. Dewey's father swore that Sansui would be shattered in a single strike, and that it had to hurt. The boy shot back that any man who even glanced at his sister would spend the rest of his life begging for forgiveness he could never earn. Sansui froze at the realization he was up against a super protective father and a brother who was downright obsessed with his sister. Then Dewey's father roared that there'd be no objections, and the duel was about to start. Dewey's father stared at Sansui and said, "If you can smash through all of my son's defenses with a single swing of that wooden sword, then you and your kid can stay." Dewey's father snapped and screamed for his son to torch Sansui, fast. Dewey's brother roared that anyone who even stepped near their beloved sister would get wiped out. Then he screamed the spell, Burning Soul. Sansui let out a steady breath, then snapped into action. Using his mental balance power, he jerked forward and slammed Brother Dewey right on the head, and everyone watching the duel couldn't believe what they just saw. Sansui asked, all shy, what Dewey's dad said after that one devastating punch. Then Dewey groaned, disappointed, calling Sansui's fighting style flat-out boring. Dewey's father froze in shock at his son's defeat and thought, if I'd been there fully armed, I could have ended it in a single strike, even with a wooden sword. Dewey grumbled that it was painfully boring, but the sword still looked like it belonged to him, like it was growing out of his soul. So Dewey's father finally snapped and decided that if this kept going, he'd have to bring Sansui on as Dewey's bodyguard. Father Dewey yanked his sword free in a flash and swore this wouldn't happen, barking at Sansui that he'd left himself wide open. Then Sansui struck hard, knocking him down and growling that Father Dewey's attack was just too slow. Dewey's brother and father lay sprawled on the ground, utterly spent, and when she looked at them, all you could do was sigh. She just smirked and tossed out that, with no more objections, Sansui would finally be hired as her bodyguard. Her father tried to talk, but he couldn't even lift himself off the floor. Sansui grinned and said, "Thank you so much." Blower, right behind him, figured he looked totally normal, until a maid hurried up and snapped, "Rain, look, her father is alive." Sun Sui scooped the girl into his arms and thought, this is it, this is where Rain will grow. Then he worried he might have chosen wrong, but still steeled himself and told himself he'd land a job. He couldn't shake the gut feeling that something was terribly wrong. Lady Dewey was no run-of-the-mill noble, and the second he told her hermits don't burn, she locked him in blazing flames. When he said hermits don't drown, she decided to prove it by shoving Sansui into deep water, because Dewey is pure selfishness and she can't stand losing control, so she always makes it work for herself. In Arcana Kingdom, right behind the royal family's throne, 4 noble houses rule their own territories, and Dewey comes from the Spade family. And yeah, her dad runs the family like a king, while her brother hovers over her like a guard dog, but nothing can reign in her narcissistic chaos. Sansui only stayed in this place while the rain kept falling, and the great Spade family stepped in, raising the ignoramus's daughter into a real lady and taking care of her like their own. For someone like him who knows nothing but how to swing a sword, there's no safer home than to raise her with the woman he loves. Dewey grew to adore Rain more than anything. Brower was skeptical about Sansui at first, but the truth hit hard. Sansui was a girl, and once Brower saw her, he realized she'd grown up fast. She's an absolute beast with a blade, always going all in, strict as stone when it counts, yet warm, friendly, and genuinely kind. Sansui remembered the one time Dewey's brother came back with an entire army to reclaim his honor. He even dragged Sansui back into the ring for one more fight, and then it just kept going. 5 long years for Sansui, Rain growing up, while Dewey and Brower aged right along with her. A carriage rolled up to Dewey's mansion, and Sansui sprang out, yanking luggage from the back like a storm of chores. Then Rain, Dewey, and Brower spilled out after him, and Rain bolted straight over to hug Shinsui. Brower told him they'd left Sansu hanging long enough, and when he checked if everything was set, Sansu snapped yes. Then Dewey stormed up to the carriage and yelled that she was sick of sharing a house with her parents, because it was finally time for the Royal Academy. The carriage rattled down the road straight for the Royal Academy, and Dewey leaned into Brower, asking, how much longer? But Brower snapped back that they'd have to spend the night nearby, so they wouldn't reach the academy until tomorrow. Dewey leaned in and asked Sansui if any hooligans were lurking nearby, and Sansui warned him there could be a den of bandits hiding in the nearby mountain. Then Dewey grinned, practically buzzing, because it sounded totally irresistible. Brower snapped that an ambush was coming, so Dewey needed to stay put in the carriage, but Dewey shot back that she'd have none of it and wouldn't listen to a word of his advice. She tore herself away from her father's house because she missed it so much it hurt every single day, and now they wanted her to miss it all over again. No way. Blower and Sansu looked gutted, and Rain, still in the middle of it, turned to Dewey and asked, will we be okay? What? Dewey said, relax, Sansui and Brower are insanely strong, so there's nothing to worry about. She's probably right, but Sansui still felt those sudden demands creeping back. Even without a single complaint, Rain's face screamed worry. With him and Brower backing him up, this should have been smooth sailing, but that ambush is going to be a nightmare. Even Brower's brows knitted in anger, yet they still can't go against Dewey. After all that, they kept riding until the road vanished deep inside the mountains. Rain stared out the window, terrified as darkness swallowed the way to Sansui, and she admitted, shaking, that she was scared. Sunsui told Brower, "We're already here." Brower shot back, "How many are there?" Sunsui answered, 20. Then Dewey scooped up Rain and declared, "You're staying with me." Brower swore Sansui would stick with Dewey and Rain to keep them safe, while she handled the bandits, and when Sansui finally turned to the driver, she demanded they stop the carriage, so they could hop out for a bit, then ordered everyone to stay put inside with the doors locked tight. Shadows and the bandits themselves started closing in on Brower and Sansui, and the word spread fast. These guys were the perfect catch because their gear looked completely wrecked and they looked starving. Brower snapped that it was pure impudence. How dare they defy Spade's shovel? Then the bandits shot back with rude words and barreled in to attack. Brower hissed that night Dewey's Spade would be their enemy, and she unleashed the power of sliding wind. The bandits froze when they saw it. Their enemy wasn't just a fighter, he was a magician. One of them yelled that he couldn't be allowed to cast a single spell, but Brower roared back that anyone who so much as touches a hair of the Spades is heading straight for oblivion. Brower sprang to his feet, ready to strike, and the bandit screamed that he was straight up flying, because even among mages, true flight was insanely rare, and then the same thought hit everyone, wasn't he just a kid? There was no way they could beat a mage this powerful. Some bandits backed off Brower and instead seized Dewey and Rain as hostages, and Sansui stepped in fast. He gave his name and swore he was a swordsman who'd fight them head-on. Then the bandits barked, "Move or we'll cut you down." Sansui unleashed the Z-sword, smashing one bandit cold, then rocketed back into the shadows and slammed another with the Z-release. Brower roared back that their wind was nothing compared to her power. Then she marched up to the carriage with Sansui and announced they'd wiped out every last bandit. None slipped away. Dewey, staring at the rain pouring down, laughed that Brower was still putting on a show like he always did, while he stayed just as plain as ever. The night was pitch black and she could barely see, so Brower blurted out how sorry she was, while Sunsui snorted that she was being picky, just like always. Dewey snapped that this was a total letdown for her, so Brower and Sansui better hurry inside. Right as the words left her mouth, Rain charged up, wrapped Dewey in a hug, and asked if she was really okay. Dewey insisted everything was fine now, and Rain demanded to know if it was actually true. Dewey shot back that, yeah, those two had already handled the bad guys, and honestly, I couldn't shake the feeling that he really wanted she to throw them some kindness too. Royal Arcana Academy. Dewey's carriage rolled up, and Dewey plus her crew halted in front of a massive building. Dewey asked, "Is this really the best academy in the whole country?" Sansui shook his head, wide-eyed, bigger than I ever imagined. Dewey pressed Sansui for his thoughts, and Sansui snapped back that he could feel a massive magical aura pounding in the air. Dewey leaned in and demanded Rain's take, and she grinned back that his house was the real showpiece. So Dewey and Sansui immediately praised her as a good girl and patted her head. A woman stormed out of the academy and snapped that if you were a daughter from one of the four great families, their academy was painfully dull. Dewey shot back, "Is that the principal or the great sage?" She smirked and said, "Don't worry. The principal is more than enough to prove it." Dewey walked up to the principal and asked if she preferred being called a mage, and when she heard that word, she snapped back that it was smarter to call her principal, because the title of mage only reminded her how long she'd been alive. Dewey bowed to the principal and asked, "So we're under your wing from now on?" Like that was the best news ever, then begged the principal of Royal Arcana Academy to guide her and her servants and back them with real support. She flung her mouth open and cackled, saying, "So Dewey really thinks my school can teach someone like me? Please, everything that matters already got handed to me by the teachers of the great Spade family." Sans, yeah, we figured it had to be true, sure, they were talking out loud, but it looked like they were just having the time of their lives, like they were clicking perfectly. The principal insisted someone here must be blessed, like Dewey, because everyone was getting bored fast, yet even with her age pushing her back, she still refused to slow down, convinced there were tons of incredible things left in this world she had to see and understand. She turned to Sansui and said rumors claimed one of Dewey's guards studied the sage art, so rare that even she, the Royal Academy's top mage and headmaster, had never heard of it, let alone watched it work. The principal grinned and teased that she wanted Sansui to show off her techniques to the academy students, but Dewey snapped a sharp look at her and said she wasn't so sure. We figured this request was a complete nightmare for him. After 500 years of training, he still could only pull off 4 sage techniques. Light step lets Sansui slash his weight and soak up everything he touches, and flash step, that one teleports him across long distances in the blink of an eye. His third ability, energy sword, infuses his wooden blade with raw power, turning it into a heavy, steel-hard weapon. His last, final power, energy discharge, lets Sansui pour energy into anything he touches, then smash, strike, and knock his enemies back out of the way. After 500 years of training, he finally had to admit it. He could only pull off these four sage techniques, and even then, anyone could do them, which made them painfully useless. Dewey knows exactly what's going on, and he's praying she won't ask him to whip out his abilities and show them his techniques. The director's smile sliced sharp, and she let out a chuckle, saying Dewey already knew the bachelorable heiress was bragging about what her guards and bodyguards could do. Dewey froze at what the director said, snapped back to ask again if he meant Hepin, then whirled toward the anxious Sansui and told her straight up, since that's what's happening and the director wants an exhibition match, maybe she'll say yes. The principal lit up with joy, gushed her gratitude to Dewey, and thanked her to the fullest, while Sun Sui, utterly wrecked, stewed in the thought that he'd known all along this is exactly how it would end. Royal Arcana Academy Stadium. Huge crowds stared each other down across the arena. On one side stood Dewey Spade, the Spade heiress, flanked by Brower, one of her bodyguards, and Sansui, a mysterious swordsman who wielded the rarest technique of all, the Sage Art. On the far side, Happy Botchable waited, heiress of the Botchable clan, while a kid in a classic Japanese uniform stood there too, alongside a short girl and a red-haired woman. Sansui thought Hepin Betrebla comes from a family every bit as ruthless and powerful as Dewey Spade, the heiress who owns the entire Betreble legacy. She's on the same level as Dewey, but right when Happy Betreble turns to him, he blurts out that they haven't seen each other in forever. Dewey pulled a grimace and blurted, "Man, it's been ages since I've seen you." But when Hepin stood there, somehow blend in camouflage and all, Dewey couldn't even remember the last time they'd met. Sansui clocked right away that Dewey was puffed up with pride, always clawing to stay above everyone else, and then, straight in front of her, those two girls were pulling off some rare, unreal ability. The red-haired woman spun around and snapped that she could do whatever she wanted, then said she'd wait her turn. Even the tiny short girl chimed in, saying she would wait her turn too. Sun Sui watched the girls walk off and felt they weren't ready to throw down, but the real danger crawling in his gut was this Japanese. He was totally rocking imitation leather boots and a synthetic blazer, and he wasn't even treating the bachelorable heiress like someone from the four great families would. The Japanese man snapped his head toward the heiress of Bachelorla and warned her that Hepin must stay out of all the chaos brewing here. Sun Sui swore he was 100% Japanese, and still, this wasn't just some rare gift. He had a nasty little trick that could reflect any kind of magic back at you. Everyone rushed to the stadium, packed wall-to-wall with people, and right in the middle stood a short girl and a red-haired woman, while from every corner hushed whispers swirled, talking about them. Sun Sui snapped around in shock, stunned that so many people could cram into that place. The director stepped up and started her speech. Today, right in front of everyone, four rare ability masters were about to unleash their finest skills. The principal blared, "Whoever gets out first, make way for Princess Suni Majin from the far-off kingdom of Majin." Suni screamed the words of her technique, "The royal power is locked inside my body," then begged the Age of Myths to crown her with the founding king's power, turning her into a roaring, unstoppable beast. "Great lion, protector of the royal family, take hold of my body and paint this land with your unstoppable greatness." Suni burst onto the arena floor as a towering lion, filling almost the whole space with sheer divine power, so this was her technique, divine possession. Then she demanded everyone's reaction and bragged that it was her family's secret gift, passed down through generation after generation. The Royal Arcana Academy's top rulebook went cold with shock when Sunya unleashed her technique, and in the stands, the crowd erupted into frantic chatter, because this was the first time anyone had ever seen magic like it, and it was so terrifying that a few people actually yelped and jumped back in fear. The director snapped out of her stupor, blurted that it was beautiful magic, and admitted she never imagined she'd ever witness something this rare from a far-off land, and yeah, it was incredible. Suni stood tall before the crowd, grinning like she owned the moment. The director stepped aside and pointed to the next magician. Then she revealed the truth. The next girl wields cursed magic. Most people barely even clock her, but you better lock in and watch every single move. The little girl shot the principal a grateful nod and said thanks, then introduced herself as Tsugape, because the moment she flips on her cursed magic, she's granted the power to summon curse energy and start reshaping everything in her path. She yanked her staff up and aimed it dead at the sword in front of the headmaster's desk. Then those creepy black energy swirls twisted the blade, made it groan, and sent it crashing to the floor. The crowd erupted into applause for Suga, shouting that this is the Sabe family's power passed down from their ancestors. Then the director strode up to the shattered sword, scooped it into her hands, and gasped, "This is incredible." The principal thanked Suni and Suga for their kindness and showing off their skills, and Suga shrugged, saying it wasn't that hard at all. Then Suni stood there with her hands on her hips and snapped that it wasn't all that impressive either. She shot to her feet and roared that the ones who'd been waiting forever were up next, and then she promised the strongest swordsman in the kingdom, the future head of the Betrebel house, would step into the arena. Sun Sui stood toe-to-toe with Saige as the crowd erupted in anticipation, and Dewey grinned at the boy, saying his win was already written. Still, he urged him to step out and prove the gap between their ranks. Hepin barked at Seigi to go win it, grab the title of the strongest from the Spade family, no excuses. The boys stood there looking totally awkward, watching the girls go at it against each other in the competition. Dewin dropped onto the couch beside Rain, grinning at the opponents like he owned the place, while Heben stood with her friends, eyes locked on the battlefield, tense as a drawn bow. The director grinned so hard it hurt and blared that the guard riding with the Spade heiress's convoy was Shirokuro Sansu, aka the child-faced holy sword. She said he was the strongest swordsman in the Arcana Kingdom, and the boy instantly froze, weirdly embarrassed. He was sure he never told anyone his age, but it hadn't stopped showing up, so it was obvious how everyone had clocked that kid face of his. Then he adds, after 500 years I still look like a kid, so yeah, that nickname fits perfectly. Anyway, he stays right behind the master, and Sun Tzu even jokes that the Holy Sword title somehow humiliates him. Then the director grins and says Sun Tzu pulls off some rare ability. The woman admitted she'd never even seen it herself, called *** the art of the sage ***, and the moment she said that, whispers exploded about the boy's power. Then she declared that today, at Ms. Dewey Spade's *** request, the performance would kick off as a special exhibition match. Hepin snapped her tongue with fury the moment she heard it, and Director Am turned to the other guy and barked that Mizusega was right on their side. She kept insisting he was engaged to Happy Batrabla, and that he'd be the next head of the Batrabla family, while Sansui couldn't help wondering if that living trope was nostalgia in the flesh. The director told him that Miss Suni Majin and Miss Suga Sib, back when they were all with him, were engaged too, and the woman lit up, asking, "Isn't youth beautiful?" Sansui's stomach dropped. Of course there was a harem trope too. The principal said Sursega fights with support magic, then fired up the class to make sure everyone knew this was their first real chance to witness a legendary defender in an actual battle. The woman told them to watch closely, and Sun Tzu believed support magic meant healing and defense, so he could mend people's wounds. The guy kept bragging that he could forge walls and armor with magic, and Saiga roared, "You're using bright armor," just as the guy's armor snapped into place. Segi barked at his opponent that he'd been waiting, right when he was ready. Sansui yanked out his sword and snapped back, "I'm ready." Segi grinned and said, "Start anytime, I'll take your hit." Sansui stared down his opponent and realized he'd only been able to feel one kind of energy so far, so if the others stayed hidden, he swore he'd fire off a different ability. The boy kept thinking, clinging to the explanation, so the secret wasn't just for support magic, he could tap into other spells too, and if he wanted to, he could still fight like a real defender. Sen sized up Saiga's stance and immediately clocked it. His sword work screamed beginner, and the way he held it looked all wrong, like he didn't know how to handle a blade, while the armor he'd built looked flimsy at best. Everyone held their breath, bracing for the battle to finally ignite, and Sunsui swore that quick step would shoot him in instantly. Then an energy sword blow would slam into his armor and KO him cold. Sansui stared at Seigi, stunned, because the energy around him felt totally different now, and his face shifted with it. Wait, did he read Sansui's thoughts, or was he straight up predicting the future? Could that even be real? Sansui shrugged it off. Either choice led to the same outcome, so the boy lunged in with a quick step and landed a strike on Seigi, who snapped his sword up to parry the hit. Sansui blasted an energy discharge, smack, and it detonated in a blinding flash on his armor. Seigi got slammed into the wall, his defense crumbled, and he dropped back into normal clothes. He crumpled onto the ground, knocked out cold. Hepin clapped a hand over her mouth, horror roaring inside her as she fought back a scream, while Sans just smirked and said he could only hope that was the worst of it. The director gasped in disbelief. The match was already over. Then panic rippled through the crowd as whispers exploded, everyone staring and questioning what they'd just seen, and someone even threw out the wild guess that he'd teleported. Nobody could even explain what just happened. Sansui strode up to the girls who trusted him completely, and Rain burst toward him, yelling with pure joy. Dewey said, crushed, that it was always that easy, though she totally got how awesome he was, while we fumbled through it and awkwardly said he apologized to her for it. Since we grabbed the girl and she clung to him like her life depended on it, Rain burst out happily that her dad was awesome, and Brower told the boy, again, that it was just great like always. She demanded to know why he couldn't land his strike before Sansui raised his guard, and Sansui just smirked. Somehow he'd seen his attack coming and was ready to smash it back. The boy admitted that was exactly why he switched his strike, and Brower snapped in shock, so Segi had predicted it. Sansui just shrugged, saying it looked like Segi was hiding some kind of power. The guy sneered that Sega's training was weak, like God had handed him chances on a silver platter. Then the girls surged up to Segi, who was panicking and screaming at him to wake up. Suni demanded he wake up and Suga gasped like her whole world froze. Then the director stormed in, grabbed the boy's attention, and barked for him to be hauled straight to the medic. People were whispering, saying Siggy got knocked out so fast it was scary, and that's proof of just how brutal Dewey's security really is, while the girl grinned and said she'd just been enrolled and she'd already witnessed something wild. She gushed that she was thrilled to be at the academy. Then Segi jolted back to consciousness in the infirmary, blinking in confusion for a few seconds, covering his eyes and groaning in bitter disappointment. I lost like that, how humiliating. What? Hepin's voice cracked with fury as tears streamed down her face, insisting the guard had tricked the girl, while Suni shot back that he hadn't. The swordsman caught Saiga's movement, snapped his attack in a split second, and charged and totally fired up, and the girl screamed that Saiga still wasn't even using his full power. She said if he'd given it everything, he would have won, and Suga shot back, reveal Sir Saiga's secret, and Bei's in big trouble. The girl swallowed her fear and insisted she could handle it, and then Hepin exploded in rage, screaming that he couldn't bear to see Seiga get hurt again. Segi told Sugi she was sorry for making him worry, but the truth was he was aching to beat Sansui, and even if he pulled it off, he'd have to spill his secret and unleash his magic. In this city, almost everyone is born with exactly one ability, one shot, one power, and no matter how hard you fight, you never get more. Those with magic can command the elements, fire, water, wind, and earth, while a wise heart grants control over space, gravity, and the life forces themselves, the art of the sage. People with a royal heart can transform into beasts, pure divine mastery, and those cursed with dark magic, they can twist the very soul of an object itself, cursed magic. Anyone with holy magic can forge armor and summon barriers, mend bloody wounds, and unleash miracles. But no matter which holy power they wield, it doesn't really matter unless they're one of those rare, exceptional geniuses. Elemental magic and any other rare magic someone else taught won't work for them at all, but they can finally talk about Saga now. Just like Sun Sui, he was an ordinary Japanese schoolboy who got mistakenly killed by God. It's the same wild mess again. God smashes a Japanese guy by mistake, panics and apologizes, hands him special powers, and throws him back into the very same world as Sansui and Saiga, who's all about holy magic, wasn't the only one. Elemental magic, royal heart, cursed magic, wise heart, he's stacked with them all, and that's his blessing. Right now, Saiga can tap into 4 different kinds of abilities. Like fire magic, holy armor magic, divine possession, plus that holy armor magic again. There was even lost magic, mentioned only in ancient records, and then came time-bending power that could peek at the future, along with divination magic. After all that training, he finally unlocked the sage's art, and his stats blew the roof off. That kind of power doesn't feel earned, it screams cheat. Afraid he'd pull in the wrong kind of attention, he made a risky choice. He pretended he could use only one ability in public. To master them all, he has to grind relentlessly for years, pushing himself day after day. Sunsui and Seigi clashed again, and Sunsui steamrolled him, so fast that Hepin shrieked in horror, screaming that he'd already been crushed again, even with all his powers, while Suni stared in shock like, how is Sunsui still going at full speed? What? Sugi let out a disappointed sigh and snapped her hands over her eyes, while Sansu fidgeted, uneasy at how cocky Sigi was about his cheat, because after Sigi got beaten, he still insisted on a duel the very next day. Seigi misread his chances, then brainlessly lunged at him with his blade held high, only for Shunsui to clock every move, dart in, and smash his aim straight into his torso. His speed shattered the armor, but Seigi still slammed straight back into it and dropped out cold. Dewey stared at Seigi and snapped that he'd started using abilities beyond holy magic, and even though Dewey saw it coming, what he witnessed felt like a straight-up disgrace. She snapped that it was a total waste of time, then Dewey shot his friends a question. Could they get back to the academy? Brower nodded yes. But when Saiga's friends saw the girl, their anger exploded. Dewey snapped to Sansui that even if his opponent was weak, ignoring her and failing to entertain her made him a busted guard, and Seigi stumbled out that he was begging his mistress's forgiveness. Dewey swore it was unbelievable, and she couldn't stop wondering what Rain's mother ever saw in him, because it hit her hard. He hadn't changed one bit since they first met. Brower leaned in and asked the boy why he was a few years older, and Sunsui jerked his gaze away, mumbling something awkward while the girls stared him down, dead silent, waiting for his answer. The guy basically laughed at the few years part, then Dewey shot back that he and Rain weren't related by blood at all, so she leaned in and asked if he had a woman he was interested in. Sunsui stumbled and admitted, no, he doesn't even know what to say, because the truth was too wild for him to say like, yeah, I'm a sage and I'm 500 years old. Dewey claimed he'd mastered a permanent poker face, then hinted he wanted something sensual and wildly extravagant, so Sansui blurted, stunned, What kind of sensual relationship are you talking about? The boy admitted that back when he apprenticed under the master, he was taught to shut down lust before it even sparks. Brower's cheeks flared red as she nodded, and Dewey and Sansui just stared at her, stunned. Brower stumbled through it, saying that for Sansui, who wanted nothing to do with romance, this was a real mess, and Dewey stared at her friend, fully impressed. Sansui stared at the bracing in shock. Segi snapped back to his senses, and Heppen rushed over to help him sit up. Then Segi glared at Sansui, furious that he'd beaten him again in front of everyone. A full month had passed since Mrs. Dewey walked into the academy, and right now, the principal was up front teaching her class, telling them, "You already know this. With holy magic, you can forge armor that shields your body." Everyone leaned in and listened hard as she spoke, while Sun Sui stood behind Dewey with Brower, secretly expecting her to get worn out at first, but surprise hit him. She kept showing up and paying attention to the headmistress's lessons like she was unstoppable. The director kept saying that one day a researcher finally forged armor to shield himself. Then, because he was a fire mage, the suit erupted in flames instead, and rage burned through him. Because we figured the headmistress was delivering a talk on the horrors of failure in magical research, the guy decided it might help her. Then she awkwardly snapped that the only thing he managed was burning alive. Dewey snapped her hand over her mouth to choke back a laugh, and he couldn't believe the lectures had gotten her giggling, like that wasn't downright uncalled for. Then the principal laid it out. This failure teaches one rule: never try magic on yourselves. We kept staring at Brower. She watched him like a hawk, and the second he caught her eyes, the girl snapped her gaze away like she'd been burned. He couldn't shake the feeling that something big had shifted in his personal life. He'd known Brower since she was a kid, and he couldn't believe that time had already slammed into them. Little Rain was out in kindergarten, making friends like it was nothing. Sansui kept telling himself it was obvious. Brower's romance spark was all his doing, while the lady in Rain just laughed and teased her about it. Sansui admitted this would be an insanely awkward mess, and then they rushed back to Dewey's other mansion, right near the academy where she studies. Sansui faced Brower head-on, and the girl's cheeks flared as she stammered out an awkward apology, because lately she'd been shortchanging her duties way too much. Sansui told her to chill, and Dewey and Rain kept their eyes on them. Brower then shot the boy a worried look, asking if all of this wasn't too much for him to handle. The girl admitted it sounded weird coming out of her mouth, but she couldn't stop staring at him. Sansui thought that if this had happened before he became a sage, he'd have been floating in pure heaven. Brower told her, "If anything hits the fan, you can count on me," and Sansui shot back, "It's fine, I'm relying on you too." When she pressed him, "What do you mean, would you really protect me?" he answered with a confident yes. The boy heard a sudden noise, whipped to the window, and Brower blurted, worried out of his mind, "What's going on?" But Sansui's face went pale as he screamed that the current and the previous heads were barreling toward them right now. Riders on horseback closed in on the mansion, while the boy and the girls rushed out onto the balcony. Brower leaned in and snapped, "Sansui was right, this is the cavalry unit of the heads." Then she claimed that gear wasn't for casual trips between homes, and Dewey shot back, "Did you even read the letter I sent the other day?" But yeah, talk about a terrible time. Brower and Sansui blurted at the exact same moment, "What kind of nonsense is this letter?" And one of the men shrieked that they should all die, while Rain grabbed her dad and confessed, shaking, that she was terrified. Dewey squeezed Rain into a hug, grinned, and asked why a scared kid like that was here, then demanded why Sansui hadn't calmed them down yet. Sansui gasped like, "I get it." Sansui told Brower, "If that lady gets attacked, make sure she's safe." Then Sansui slammed into Brother Dewey, charging straight into the front ranks. He struck him on the head, and Brother Dewey crumpled, unconscious. Night after night, they stopped dead and stared in shock at the boy. Someone gasped in horror that a holy sword was right there in front of them, and then the head of the family stormed out, furious, shouting that he had absolutely no right to come near his daughter. Sansui slumped, thinking the leader was still just as full of energy, and then bam! The boy burst in front of him and cracked him on the head with a wooden sword, dropping him into unconsciousness. Sansui halted his horse, and a knight rode up to him, spilling out an apology for interrupting him, and Sansui, cheeks burning, awkwardly insisted that everything was totally fine. The boy figured they'd gone mad because of that lady. Still, they should have apologized. The knight told Sansui they'd keep heading for the lady's mansion, and the boy insisted he'd ask them not to rush. Seigi, Heppen, Suni, and Sugi rode together in the carriage when the boy's sword suddenly spoke up, telling him not to sweat, because as long as the divine blade was by his side, everything would be fine. Seigi burst into a grin and agreed, saying he'd fight right alongside XX. Sansui and Brower awkwardly bowed to that knight who'd been stuck dealing with the mess from the chapter, and the knight returned the bow fast, insisting nothing was wrong, that it wasn't their fault. As we stood there in awkward silence, the knight bowed to the boy one more time, then thundered off with the others toward Dewey's mansion, and Brower and I watched them vanish into the distance. Everyone packed into the mansion, and Dewey sat down with Rain across from her father and brother, while Sansui and Brower stood right behind her, teacups set on the table, and the man leaned in to tell his sister they were up against plenty of enemies. He stared at his sister, eyes locked, begging her to feel how serious this was, then raised the cup to his lips and snapped that if they couldn't guard his little sister, then they had no right to call themselves her protector. The family head snapped in a tense voice that they'd crushed an unannounced exam with stellar results, while Sun Sui clocked the uneasy guilt in their eyes, even as he wished they'd feel ashamed for real. Sun Sui kept pressing his logic. Every night had vanished the instant they arrived, like they were sent on some pointless errand, and he could still see them bowing to him, clear as day. The family head slammed the letter onto the table with a booming ulura, and his face crumpled with pure terror at the words. Everyone sensed something awful, but only Dewey knew the real trick she'd played. With rage in his voice, the man snapped that Dewey's letter swore she and Sansui only said they'd married, then teased that Brower would have their kid, so Dewey clapped a hand over her own mouth to stop herself from laughing at the prank, and that was the whole point of the letter. Brower went bright red and yelped in shock. She knew her mistress was all about strict rules, but every time those attacks happened it still humiliated her, and yeah, she really liked Sansui. The girls just froze in this awkward mess. Then the head of the family cleared his throat and asked, like it was suddenly normal, if it wasn't too early for this. Brother Dewey declared with total confidence that everything matched what father said, while Brower's cheeks burned, Sansui sagged in exhaustion, and Rain stared at her dad, stunned. Dewey even acted like she had no clue and did nothing at all. Brother Dewey leaned in and promised that if it was a marriage between Brower and Sansui, he'd set Sansui up with a perfect position, so Brower could wed a nobleman's daughter. The family head snapped that he couldn't possibly approve Sun Tzu marrying his daughter, and out of all her crazy whims, this one was the line he refused to cross. Dewey told her, "Then I want you to marry whoever you choose," but the family head snapped back that the letter brought up a whole other issue. Sansui's stomach churned because it felt like a dodge. The chief leaned in and demanded whether the girl's fiancé, Batrable, was really the kind of guy who could use any magic at all. Dewey snapped back, saying they at least knew he could wield holy magic, master the elements, and crush divine spells. The family's head stared at the truth, and once he believed it, he knew he had no choice. He had to treat that guy like a threat. Brother Dewey said he finally gets why House Batrable took him in. Then he leaned in and admitted that Saiga is still no match for Sansui. Dewey grinned wide and said it was absolutely true. No way his protector could ever lose to some lucky betrothed. Her brother shot back that Sansui really earns the face-to-face child with the Holy Sword title, because he's the strongest swordsman around, and that power instantly boosts their whole standing. Sansui snapped that compared to Master Swiboku, he was basically a rookie. Then the whole room froze in silence. Even Brother Dewey fumbled out, "Every time I say this, I really feel like," but he couldn't finish. The family head snapped mid-sentence and bragged that not even the Imperial Guards could lay a hand on his son, so if this Swiboku, like the rumors claim, was even stronger than him, then who on earth was he? Dewey's brother shot back awkwardly that yeah, sure, he knew he needed a teacher, but the truth was, he couldn't even picture what that would look like. Dewey replayed every word her brother and father had just thrown at her. She admitted that the second she saw his face, she finally understood what she was waiting for, but what truly blew her mind was realizing just how massive the gap in power really was. Sun Sui was convinced that Master Sui Boku deserved the title God, because he was, without question, the strongest there was. The leader pressed, asking if this Saiga really had a sage's heart, like maybe he'd been trained by the very same man. Then Sansui shook his head hard and told him not to worry. It took Segi a mind-blowing 500 years just to scrape together the basics, and even then, he can't just copy skills by watching them. Dewey let out a breath and snapped, "Can we please stop chasing that lucky man?" Then he pushed right back, straight to the marriage between Sansui and Brower. Brower's cheeks burned at the young lady's words, and the family head snapped back. She was right, and with that, he couldn't help but stare in shock, wondering what kind of aura he was feeling now, because it definitely wasn't human. Everyone rushed outside and stared at Heppen. Segi, Suni, and Suga lined up in front of the mansion, and Heppen bowed and declared she was there to greet the current head and the former head. The girl shot Dewey a furious glare and snapped that she'd greeted her too, and Dewey let out a tired sigh. Then she pouted hard and begged for one more rematch, like she couldn't wait to get back in there. Dewey kept snapping that she wasn't buying into their little group. She wanted bigger, more important things, and when Happen heard that, he erupted, furious, shouting that Dewey only said it because he was terrified of losing. Heppen leaned in and asked Dewey if she heard everything. Then the girl snapped her head toward her friend and yelled that Saiga had been recognized as the owner of the divine sword. Segi grinned so wide with proud joy that everyone froze, and the family's head blurted in shock that this meant he was holding one of the 8 divine treasures of the world. The sword cut in and said, "Yes, it's true." Then it blazed with light and yanked itself free, tearing out of its owner's grasp like it had a mind of its own. Everyone froze, staring in pure shock, and boom, it warped into a little girl who beamed as she faced her brand new friends. The girl shouted that she was the divine sword XX, and Dewey's jaw dropped as he screamed, because somehow the blade had turned into a tiny girl who claimed she was forged by the gods as their strongest weapon. Sansui's jaw dropped, so she really was made by God, the very same God who dumped him here with Sansui. Segi started to tremble and hissed that to beat Sansui, XX would have to recognize him, because he'd pushed himself into the ground, working himself to death for the last month. Segi blared out that this time he'd win, and Sansui froze in disbelief, because he was seriously bragging about the grind he'd put in for a whole month. Meanwhile, Brower just couldn't help thinking how 1 month of training could actually flip everything. At the Batrable estate, Heppen, Segi, Suni, and Suga stood shoulder to shoulder in the head of the family's office, staring down their father, because Suni's voice shook as she begged for forgiveness, and the moment her disappointment took over, she spilled Segi's secret to Dewey. The man stared at his daughter, and she awkwardly dropped her gaze, fighting the urge to look him in the face. Then her father snapped back that even Segi couldn't land a scratch on the saint with his sword. He laughed with a heavy heart. Segi snapped that he'd poured out every ounce of strength, but the boy just went quiet, and Heppen immediately grabbed his hand to steady him. The boy didn't even glance at the girl fretting over him. Father Heppen let out a hard breath and snapped that Segi was nothing but greed. Then he tugged the keys right out of his sleeve, strode to the bookshelf, and warned, "If you keep this up, your rare gift will vanish." The man yanked open the little chest, telling Saiga that if his goal was to get stronger, then maybe this was the moment he could grab the sword and finally chase his dream. The man thrust a slip of paper into the boy's hands, asked what the map was, and Sigi leaned in, buzzing with curiosity, while Suni and Suga stared at it like it held the next big secret. At the very edge of the forest, a red cross pulsed on the map, marking the magic sword Segi craved with his whole heart, but Father Heppen snapped back that this wasn't just any blade. It was the spot for the most powerful magic sword of all, Eskex. Suga gasped, staring at the sword like it had crawled out of legend, and Suni nearly choked with shock that it was really sitting in their country. Heppen screamed that it was forged long before the kingdom of Arkaha even existed, and warned that, with a swordsman's power, the strongest sword can wipe out an entire country in one strike. Segi stared at the map and snapped, "If I get my hands on a sword like this, I'll go for it," because he was already picturing himself smashing Sansui with that magical blade. The friends pushed through the forest until a cave loomed ahead, dark and threatening, like it was warning them off with every shadow. Segi declared, "We're here," and that was it. They pushed through the dark until a blade, wedged in the stones, lit up like a beacon, and Siga's face exploded with excitement as he shouted that this was the magic sword they'd been chasing. The sword claimed it had one more challenger in mind and swore nobody could ever beat it. Sigi snapped back, screaming in fury that he'd take the one he wanted to defeat, no matter what. XX said everyone wanted the same thing, but they were nothing, mere weaklings, next to the swordsman who locked him up here, and Segi burst out, shouting that he wasn't just some ordinary guy. Segi slammed on his armor and roared that God himself had granted him power, and Ejex blinked in shock, because Segi didn't look like some peasant at all. Ejex even asked for the right to test Segi's passion and drive. They burst outside and the sword loomed from the cave. Segi slammed the stone with everything he had, crack, splitting it clean in two, and the girls erupted in cheers as Segi beamed with pure joy. Segi and XX stood before Sansui, and Segi, along with his brand new friend, grinned like they meant business. Brother Dewey stepped between them and said they were locked in and ready to start, because the moment was coming fast. Stunned that Segi hadn't even drawn his sword, we realized one thing: he was about to unleash everything at full power, so Segi roared at Eskax, "Get ready." Brother blared that it had started. X burst into flames and started turning into a sword, and Segi's eyes went wide, convinced X was a magical blade that could supercharge magic. Sigi blared that he was about to unleash grand, shining armor and the fiercest flames, because the Wolf of Disaster, God's destroyer, was calling him to lay waste to the enemies and seize the divine domain. Segi turned into a wolf, clutched armor, and raised a flaming sword. Then a brutal high wind tore through the air. Sansui realized that with these spells, Segi's attacks, defense, and physical power all surged to terrifying new heights. Sansui kept pushing his spell prediction forward, and now he could actually peek a few seconds into the future, right as Segi burst out that he was about to attack. Segi jerked his sword over his head and roared that he was calling forth the Inferno blade that slices straight through rocks, and the girls stared at him, trusting him with everything. Sun Sui caught sight of the boy charging toward him, and in a flash of seconds ahead vision, he realized this was just his way of surviving whatever was about to hit him in that brief moment. Sensui tiptoed in, blinked behind his opponent, and flipped him over in one savage move. Segi hit the ground, Sensui snatched his sword, and the guy finally snapped back into his human form. Sagi stared in shock at the enemy who'd beaten him again, and Sun Sui snapped that he didn't lose because of fate. He lost because Sagi came unprepared, and the worst part was this opponent was built for his weakest matchup. Sun Sui snapped his sword towards Saiga, who lay on the ground still armored, stunned by the fact he'd been beaten, because Sun Sui had seen this coming. Saiga lifted his head and stared back at his opponent, eyes sharp and unbroken. Sansui believed that prediction was more than a trick. It let him glimpse what would happen, but only inside his own line of sight, and that's why he could spot Saiga's next move before it even happened. To do divination, they use special books that reveal the future. Ejek swore that once he lost sight of Sansui and Saiga's eyes snapped up to the sky, everything was over for good. The sword exploded in flames, and with a crack of light it snapped back into the girl. She sizzled and burned for a few heartbeat seconds, then cooled to stillness. Dewey snapped, furious and gutted, asking why it was over so fast again, because she'd been craving an actually interesting fight, and yet it vanished even quicker than before. Suga's voice cracked as he screamed, furious that this couldn't be real. Then he immediately turned and asked how Saiga was holding up. The girls couldn't even process it. After all the times they'd searched for the magic sword together with him, their friend had still lost. Heppen blurted out how he could possibly beat Seiga-sama that fast, and Suni's fists tightened as she snapped that they'd better, except he was miles ahead of Saiga. Then Heppen's voice dropped as he admitted Saiga had pushed himself to the limit just to take down Sun Sui. Sun Sui's light step spell doesn't just help him, it scrambles anything he brushes, too. Right then, he cut Saiga's weight down, spun him around, and slammed him to the ground before Saiga could even react. This is what Sensui pulled off, so the head of the family blurted in pure shock that Sensui ended the owner of immense power with one move, and Brower couldn't wrap his head around it either, because Sensui crushed such a terrifying opponent in just a few seconds. Sansui dipped his head to Heppen, Tsugi, and Suni, while all three stared at him in stunned disbelief, still reeling from what they'd just witnessed, and the girls couldn't even drag themselves forward to help Segi. Segi stayed sprawled on the grass, and he admitted it. He'd always suspected Sansui was holding back his power, but now he's sure. Sansui is stronger than he ever imagined. X stared at Sansui, locked in on every detail. Saiga looked lost, but there was one person who still remembered, and if they wanted those crazy moves, only that one person could pull it off. The girl swore Saboki was walking beside him. She hadn't seen him in ages, yet every move Sansui made still dripped with memories of her master. The girl shrieked at Sansui to stop right there, nowhere else. Then XX snapped in rage, "So you're Saboki's disciple, huh?" and demanded he answer. Sun Sui stared at her in pure shock, while Dewey's father and Brower both went, "Wait, he looks just as surprised, too," and Dewey's brother scrambled to piece it together, and then Sun Sui shot a question at XX. "How do you know him?" XX broke down, crying and screaming that he left her behind to take God's place, and as Sansui moved, she finally saw it. He wasn't just fighting, he was his disciple. The girl blinked hard, wiped her tears away, and kept sobbing. Sansui couldn't believe his own thoughts. He actually wanted to take God's place, like maybe he really was God. Then his master, crushed and defeated, admitted he just wanted to become the strongest. Sansui snapped, "What a fool, what was I even thinking?" We were stunned at first, but then it clicked, so that's why he knew God. He had something on his mind, and the others kept their eyes locked on him, desperate to figure out what he was really saying to the execs. Segi slid in beside XX, who was still sobbing, and said, "The family head told me her old master was around long before the kingdom was even founded." Dewey leaned in, buzzing with curiosity that her old owner was Sansui's teacher, but the girl shot a look at her brother, silently begging him to pick up the story and spill it to everyone. The boy said, "Look, according to the Arcana Kingdom's ancient history, a human can't live that long," and Brower shot back, "So Master Sansui being one of his descendants is just as impossible." Ejex blared, "No way, that can't be true, because Suboki was a hermit, she simply couldn't die, and besides, she was still out there. He swore he'd left her alive. Suiboku turned her into a sword, dragged her into a cave, and sealed her in a stone for years. Then he admitted he was sorry, because all he wanted was to become the strongest and never depend on anyone or anything." She watched him walk away, and it burned. She wanted to scream that he'd waited for her, that he shouldn't leave, but she couldn't stop it. Suiboku walked out anyway, chasing the only thing that mattered, becoming the strongest. XX sobbed even harder, shouting out Suboki, Heppen, Tsugi, and Suni. While the four of them froze in stunned silence, Sigi tried to calm her, but every word he had just vanished. She shrieked that the hermit could live 1,000 years, and that he couldn't die at all, while Dewey, her brother, and their father, Brawl Rain, all remembered that Sansui hadn't changed a single bit since their very first meeting. Eskak blared a shout at Sun's Way, demanding an answer, because he was Suiboku's young disciple. Then Sun's Wei shot back that it was fine, he'd never heard her name, even though his master might be the one she was talking about. Dewey leaned in and listened hard as she snapped at the guy to answer her truthfully. He stared back, froze up, and awkwardly said, "It's good." Dewey locked eyes with him and demanded his age. Sansui sighed, admitting he couldn't remember for sure because way too much time had slipped by. Sansui blurted that thanks to his master he'd been grinding for 500 straight years, and the whole crowd stared at him in stunned silence. Seigu practically gasped, "You've been training for 500 years." After everyone learns the shocking truth that Sansui is really about 500 years old, the room goes silent with disbelief. Right after their chat outside, everyone present rushes into the mansion's hall, and one girl blurts that his whole story sounds totally unbelievable. You can tell she's fighting disbelief. How could Sinusi keep this insane information from them for years? And Dewey, she's in full-on shock, so rattled she can't even figure out what she's supposed to feel. Brother Dewey, still stunned by the bombshell he just heard, tells everyone to stop piling on Sansui, because the guy didn't hide it on purpose, and he clearly wasn't trying to lie to his family. Dewey's father steps in too, and he reveals the girl's brother actually stayed with the hero for 5 straight years. So the Spade family can finally see that their daughter's brother isn't making up lies about what happened. The girl's father admits it was all so sudden and wild that everyone who heard their tale struggled to believe it was real. Then the man clasps his hands in a tight, tense lock. Bauer's the Spade family's head, so he tells Sansui it's time to lay out the whole truth to everyone he lives with, and when Bauer talks back, he shrugs and says nobody, asking the hero to prove anything. They'll just take his word for it. Rain sits in the living room with everyone else, silent as a stone, staring straight at her father, totally lost about what's going on. She just knows one thing for sure. The whole room feels heavy, like nobody's okay. Sansui flat out says he understands everything, and you can tell the hero's dead serious. He's done hiding, so he's ready to spill the full truth to the Spade family he served for years. The hero leans in and tells the wild truth. He was born in a totally different world, and his life back then couldn't be more different from the one he's living now. As Sansui talks about his past world, he flashes back hard, replaying every moment of that short life like it just happened. He even brings up the god who later made XX and the run-in with him, telling how in the old world he died by pure mistake, while the hero stays silent on why his life got cut short. Then Sansui spills the whole story, how God's command pushed him into becoming Master Swaboki's disciple, and while the hero relives every detail, the memories hit him in blazing, vivid flashes. Sansui also lets it all out. He tells how the owner put him through his training for 500 years, and then the hero goes on to share another life-changing moment that mattered just as much. Sansui tells me how he first met Rain in the forest, back when she was just a tiny little kid, and when there was no other way out, he scooped her up and chose to raise her like his own daughter. When Rain hears this story, she doesn't buy it right away. She clocks the girl's misery instantly, and you can see it all on her face. She's sitting there with everyone else, tensing hard in her seat, fists clenched tight, clearly furious about what she just learned. Dewey's older brother admits he gets every detail, yet he still swallows every word Sansui says. Then he thanks the hero for the tale, even with all that mystery hanging in the air. Then the girl's father whips around to Sansui and flat out tells him he believes the boy, and not just because of what he says, but because the hero proved his strength and showed exactly what he was aiming for. Then the Spade family's head clocks it too. Sansui really lives up to the name child-faced swordsman saint, and tells the hero straight to his face. Neither Dewey nor Brow gives the hero a single word, and the tension screams. Dewey shoots Sansui a disgusted look, but her subordinate has absolutely no clue what she's supposed to do or feel. Out of nowhere, Dewey snaps around to the hero and demands, eyes blazing, whether that guy is keeping something else from the family. Sansui, without breaking eye contact, confidently claims he spilled everything he knew firsthand. Dewey leans in and asks straight up if he really just swung a sword to train, or if he's truly stuck with only 4 skills. Then the guy confirms it's all true. Indignant, she demands how Sansui could swing a sword for ages and still walk away with just 4 skills, then snaps that it's so ridiculous it has to be fake. Sansui blurts out in panic that every word he said is the truth, then claims that for 500 years he only ever swung his sword, learning just 4 moves, the exact ones the girl already knows. Dewey awkwardly slaps a hand to his head and blurts that he has zero clue what the sages were thinking. Then her father nods along, saying he finally gets why Saga bombed. Suddenly, Dewey's older brother snaps that the sages and their art aren't for ordinary people to copy. Out of nowhere, Rain throws herself into the talk about Sun Tizu's life. She's been thinking it over for a while, and then she turns to her father and blurts out that she has something she needs to ask him. Sansui stares at his daughter like he can't believe it, then asks what she wants to know, because he's finally ready to answer anything she asks. Without pausing for a heartbeat, she snaps, "Why did you call me that, hero?" The hero hears the question and hesitates, because it's not that he's lost, it's that he can't find the right words for his daughter, and he knows whatever he says won't truly satisfy her. After wrestling with his answer, he finally blurts out this. When they asked what the girl's name was while he was still holding her, he pulled Rain out of thin air on the spot. That nasty answer hits her like a spark, rage erupts, and she spins to her father and fires back, furious and loud, that she hates him. Right now, a bunch of them are crammed together in the living room at the Bartable estate. Happen, Suni, Saiga, Tsuga, XX, and the oldest member of the Bartable house, while the little gathering is underway. Sitting all alone on the sofa by the door, the man lets out a heavy sigh and mutters that after 500 long years, of course the guy Saiga fought back then is terrifyingly strong. A kid, also a sword, slouches on a chair by the coffee table, and XX blurts out, "I don't know every detail about what Sansui went through, even though he's way too young to be called a true sage." He also says his main weapon is a sword, which means he's got plenty more of the sage's arts left to master. Then the girl on the other sofa blurts that it's just weird calling a 500-year-old man young. Another girl, Happen, chimes in too, saying the kingdom of Median is packed with legends about sages, and she looks deep in thought as she talks. In the living room too, Suni Majin lanes in and says she's heard the sages can lift mountains into the sky and command the clouds, and she's been devouring stories like that for as long as she can remember. XX also says Suni's words are all true, and then the girl drops a wild claim. Suboki once hurled an entire mountain up into the clouds, so you can tell by the way she's staring that she fully believes every word. To Sega's shock, XX drops a bombshell too. Apparently the sage can bend the weather to his will anytime he wants. Sega's clearly freaking out when he hears it. Sansui bragged that he trained for 500 years under some legendary sage, while the kid just claimed he'd only trained for a measly month. In the end, Happen shuts down Saiga without answering a single word, then only drops one thing on the table. She can't stop wondering why that sage chose to become Dewey Spade's bodyguard. Nobody in the room dares to answer, because nobody has a clue what that answer would even sound like. The silence stretches for a couple of seconds. XX is the first to shatter the silence. He steps up, looks everyone in the eye, and demands to know what they're supposed to do next. He whips around to face Saiga, the sword's owner, and demands to know if the boy's really going to keep fighting and sparring against Suboki's student, dead serious the whole time. Finally, Saiga steels himself and goes to answer XX's question. His mouth opens, ready to speak. Then boom, someone else from the living room cuts him off before the first word even lands. The one who steps in and tries to stop Saga is Suga. She whips around to him and frantically screams that he must absolutely not keep battling Senussi. The second that explosive statement hits, every person lounging in the living room snaps their heads toward the girl, and from their confused, slightly terrified faces, you can tell. Not a single one of them thought she'd actually say it out loud. She backs away from the window like trouble in motion, closes the distance to Saiga, and when she's finally right in front of him, she slips her small palm into his hands. She snaps her voice up again and pleads with the hero, "Don't you dare fight Sansui, no exceptions." And yeah, it's basically Saiga begging to end what she thinks is a pointless showdown. Suji's voice drops to a whisper as she admits she'll never, ever let Saga suffer through the injuries he takes fighting Senussi. The girl blurts out that Saiga has already fought Senussi 3 times, and asks why that still isn't enough for him. Then she remembers every one of those 3 fights where he crumpled, lost, and got injured. Suga blurts that she'll never get why Saiga keeps pushing this competition, then straight up asks what he even thinks he's gaining from it, while Heppen just silently realizes she's saying out loud exactly what all of them are thinking. Saiga's totally lost on why she reacted like that, so he lunges in to object, but before the words even land, someone else in the room starts talking too, and the guy just clamps his mouth shut. He pushes for XX and tells everyone the real problem. Saiga might just refuse to hear the rumors in this room about a possible retreat, so he snaps that the folks in the living room shouldn't be idiots for even tossing around that idea. Ejex explains that to take down Sansui, a master can't rely on the sage's art alone. He has to hunt down rare magics and grind through decades of training, and Saiga's like, "Yeah, that sounds like not much." Suga digs in and refuses to budge, and the girl pushes him to swear right there that he'll stop fighting Sansui for good. Saiga stares hard at the girl, clearly embarrassed, and tells her he's done fighting Sanusi, though you can see plain as day he hates that idea, because right now he's got no power at all. After a long talk in the living room, Saiga storms out of the mansion, pauses only for a breath, and walks outside like he's wrestling with something big, staring straight ahead into the distance. He stares at his hand, shocked by how much a month of training has reshaped it. After non-stop sword practice, brutal calluses have formed on his palm, and even now the rubbed-off skin flakes away from hours spent gripping that blade. He glances from his own hand up to the night sky, still stunned that someone really trained for 500 years, while he's barely lived enough to believe it. Days have piled up since Saiga duked it out with Sensei, and since that fight the world has stayed eerily calm, no new shocks at all. Right now Lady Dewey is sprawled in her mansion room, sipping tea and munching sweets like the world can wait. All through that endless tea party and the downtime that came with it, Dewey just stared as Rains chewed out her father, Sansui, right there in front of him, and the whole scene was almost comically awkward. Rain glares at Sansui, growls "Daddy," and slams the question. Does he know why his daughter is mad, knowing full well what the answer is? The hero drops to his knees before her, humbly admits he finally understands why the Rain is so furious, and you can tell he's crushed and mortified now that the truth has surfaced. Turns out Rain had figured out ages ago that Sensui wasn't the girl's real biological father, so she wasn't mad, but she still had one tiny grudge tucked away in her heart. Once she cracked the truth behind her name, she started nudging it into the hero's face every chance she got, right on cue again, because this time she proves to Sansui that you can't just toss a name for a child out of thin air. That terrifying girl snaps that he needs to waste way more time picking a name. Then she smugly adds that she still likes her own name, and Sun Sui pours out heartfelt apologies to her daughter. Brower and Du sit close by, staring at the conical picture, and the lady lets out a quiet chuckle, while her assistant can't even figure out how to react. Right then, bam, someone knocks on the door, and every hero in the room gets yanked out of what they're doing. Turns out this man is happening, so the girl blurts out, "Is Dewey here, and are you free right now?" When that long, familiar voice echoed through the room, everyone instantly knew Heppen had arrived to set up their next duel. Suddenly it hits them, Heppen shows up at Dewey's place and she's not alone. She rolls in with her crew, with Saiga right there too, slumped on the couch with a guilty look on his face, then quietly admits he's been beaten. He fires off a mocking line about how he's blown the last 3 times, and then acts like it's no big deal, saying nothing else, so his words genuinely stun the girl, while Sun Sui in turn says nothing about it either. Heppen snaps to it, Saiga's finally ready to break, and the girl, even while knowing Saiga's hurting, tells herself the same brutal truth: there's nothing they can do about it. Suddenly, Du blurts out that owning your mistakes is already progress, and you can tell even Saiga isn't just standing still. She's moving forward in her development, but neither she nor her comrades have a clue how to react to those words. Suddenly, Saiga snaps and says Du is 100% right, admitting his childish antics raked everyone over with non-stop trouble. Du keeps the conversation rolling and challenges him, like, "Are you really planning to finish this with those pointless competitions?" Brower and Sansui, standing right behind her, realize it can't possibly work. Saga says the real issue was simple. The guy refused to accept he'd lost until the very last moment, and even then he only confessed one thing: he just wanted to clash with Sunsui, nothing else. Du fires off a question to the guy at the Wilderment like, "Aren't these goals dumb and pointless?" And the guy squirms, then admits in a guilty voice that the girl is right about everything. Saiga leans in and promises he'll use his powers only to protect everyone from now on, and the girls on his team practically light up, thrilled to hear it. Sansui clocks it. He sees the guy at the meeting trying to sound all cool, then remembers one ugly truth: if that attack had landed back then, he'd have been nothing but scraps. The hero glances at XX and realizes it all feels like fate's punchline, written on the legendary sword Saiga dug up, the same blade his teacher once owned. The swordman barges into the talk and interrupts the whole vibe, then the boy blurts, "Can I change the subject?" He admits he's got mixed feelings about Suboki's student, the one who's stuck serving some totally ordinary person. Suddenly Rain blurts out what she's thinking, asking the girl if Master Sueboki, of all people, really doesn't serve anyone. Sansui tries to picture what his teacher was like back when he was young, but he knows that sort of guess is going to be brutally hard to pull off. Du even admits she'd be dying to know what kind of teacher her bodyguard's master really was. XX studies her closely, then tells her straight up he won't drag up the life of his old owner in front of her. Seeing how hungry everyone is to hear more, he still switches gears and blazes, "If you folks really want it, I'll tell you about the hero's teacher, right now." The living room goes wide-eyed as that sudden turn hits everyone like a shock. According to XX, Suboki was insanely vain, and just as insanely hungry to climb as high as he possibly could. He even remembers his old master, so rock-solid and unstoppable that there was no way he could ever picture serving anyone else, or protecting someone the way Sansui does. Brower and Sansui listened to the boy's tale, stunned that he flipped his mind so fast. Just minutes ago he swore he'd never tell a thing about his old master, but now he was rushing to tell everyone everything he knew. Still, XX insists nobody can say for sure how many countries were wiped out after they got hit by the Swaboki's wrath. And the boy adds this too: after those countries got wiped out, his old master didn't just lose his temper, he redirected that fury somewhere else. XX remembers his old owner could make a volcano blow at the snap of a finger, and right now, someone S posted outside Du's door, silently eavesdropping on everything inside. The boy keeps going, saying that once, through pure practice, his master turned a fox into a dead wasteland, and everyone in the living room leans in, hanging on every word of the sword's tale. Sansui hears this and instantly realizes his teacher didn't just teach, he cooked up a whole storm of wild, controversial inventions. Right then, Rain whips around to his father and blurts out how amazing it is that Sansui gets to learn under someone this strong, only for the hero to stay quiet, smile back, and say nothing. Sansui isn't sure what to make of his past or his teacher, but if telling it helps his daughter feel better, then he's glad, because deep down, he can't help but be blown away by what the master has done. Right then, two strangers roaming the forest stumbled on two mossy stones stacked together, and they immediately figured, this has to be a grave ahead. Cloaked in hooded robes that swallowed their faces, one of them leaned in and growled, this would be so much easier if the grave had a name. Out of nowhere, they're called from behind, and the strangers whip around, fear spiking hard as they tense up. The man who steps forward is Sri Bok, and he immediately asks if they know robbing graves is a pretty lousy way to live. Once the assailants realize they've been spotted, they yank out their daggers on the spot and charge in, ready to brutally cut down the witness before they can even blink. Suiboki then tells them to just calm down, straight-faced, because apparently they're not ordinary mercenaries at all. Chasing a peaceful answer, Suiboki strides up to the strangers and demands to know, do they want to find out who's actually buried in this grave? The guys don't say a word, still trembling, then they silently nod and brace themselves to hear what Suiboki's about to unleash. Suiboki says that 5 years back, a silver-haired woman showed up with her baby, only for wolves to rip her apart right here. Then Suiboki admits they arrived too late, so he buried her in this very spot. One of the mercenaries finally leans in and asks, so what in the world happened to that silver-haired baby? Suiboki grins sincerely, then answers in a calm, steady voice that his student once took custody of her. He also says that maybe she grew up in the human world long ago, then points it out to the mercenaries, she's not here in this forest, either. The mercenaries trade sharp looks, jerk their heads in agreement, spin on their heels, and vanish into the thick, shadowy bushes of the forest. Suiboki watched it all unfold, and relief flooded him. Thankfully, the people he met could actually reason it out, but he still couldn't figure out what they were after. And Suiboki can't help wondering how his student's holding up. He actually cares whether Sansui is managing in this new world. Another tense chat is unfolding in the academy director's office, when the girl turns to the headmistress and snaps that, no matter how hard they hunted, they still can't find him, and they've got zero leads on who he even is. That young, dark-haired girl chatting with the headmistress, turns out she's Stando Arcana, the very first princess of the Arcana Kingdom. The headmistress beams with gratitude at the girl who brought her the newest scoop, then tells her with total confidence that she always sees right through the whispers swirling through the academy. The headmistress likens the rumors to a jar of moths, open it and they'll scatter everywhere, and then smacks that comparison right onto the mess swirling around the young swordsman. Stando Arcana rushes to the headmistress and spills everything she's uncovered. Sirikoro Sansui really is a swordsman, and he's been alive for over 500 years. The girl, spilling the whole thing, crushes the paper in her hands and blurts that she can't believe any of this is real, yet after knowing what he's capable of, something eerie still claws its way inside her. The headmistress goes completely silent. The headmistress admits it terrifies her to think the boy might fail against Sir Sansui, yet Sir Seiga is still razor-skilled, and the girl shoots back that everything is unfolding exactly the way they all predicted. Turns out Saga's so powerful right now he's multiple times stronger than the royal guard, yet somehow he can still level up even more. Stando Arcana stared out the window in silence for a couple of seconds, then snapped, dead serious, that the royal family couldn't fall behind, no matter what. The girl slams the idea down. The royal family has to lock in the perfect ward ASAP, someone who's basically like Saiga Butterbell but still different, with real strength and power to back it up. Stando Arcana realizes he needs one fighter who can crush Shirokuro Sansui in raw power, and still stand their ground against that lightning blade. Right now, another brutal conversation crashes into Sansui's day inside Dewey's mansion, definitely not a pleasant one. Lady Spade muses that she figured Sansui was older than the rest of them, but she never, ever expected him to be older by a staggering 500 years. The hero drops his head in defeat when Rain finally stops coming at him, and his mistress instantly clocks the truth. wasting zero time and not sparing her bodyguard at all. He doesn't even glance at the girl, keeps his head down and flat out apologizes, saying he owes her the most sincere apology for the silence. Out of nowhere, Dewey snaps that if the truth just burst out like this, she has to rethink everything about Sanshui and Brower. Brower hears it and just sits there, totally baffled, saying nothing. Dewey keeps talking, insisting she can't drag her assistant into marrying some 500-year-old granddad, yes, the one she calls Sansui, while Lady Spade sits there, staring off like she's deep in thought. Dewey says it doesn't matter if 10 years or 20 years blow by, he'll stay exactly who he is right now, with zero change. Lady Spade opens her mouth to warn them what marrying Sansui will unleash for Brower, but the second she starts, she snaps shut, silence slams down before she can get a single word out. Suddenly the girl clocks it: if Hepin marries Saiga while Brower marries Sansui, then Dewey gets left totally alone, so she clamps her mouth shut for now and starts racing through what she can do. Her mood crashes fast and she's got no idea what to do. Then Rain clocks it instantly, and Dewey just shrugs, saying he'll push that brutal question off until later. She slumps on the sofa arm, goes deathly quiet, and admits she has zero time to dwell on it. Then she repeats the same chilling words about the wedding of Brower and Sansui. Suddenly Dewey blurts that she's got to find someone for herself, someone cute with the right pedigree, and whoever it is, their personality can't embarrass her in the slightest. The girl shouts with total confidence that the man she marries will be strong enough to end up in the Spade family. Dewey also swears that whoever she picks will have to match every demand her father and older brother set, and when Sansu hears that, she can't shake the feeling that Dewey will never find someone like that. Right in the middle of Dewey's brutal conversation and her monologue at her subordinates, bam, someone knocks on the door, and all four guys in the living room snap their heads toward it. The man pounding on the door turns out to be a knight, and when nobody opens after a short wait, he slams his voice through the door, saying he didn't come empty-handed and that he's got a message for Dewey from the Caputo family. Still, nobody dares open the door, so the knight roars louder as he snaps that he won't talk to Lady Spade, then asks if the girl is free right now. He clenches the tiny envelope even tighter, gripping the letter like it might slip, and roars that what he brought the girl is dead urgent. After a brief wait, the knight finally slips into the mansion and barges straight into Dewey's chambers. Then, the moment Lady Spade hears where the message came from, she's stunned. It's from the Caputo family, and now she can't stop wondering what secrets that letter is hiding. The knight closes in on Dewey, drops to one knee, and shoves an envelope into her hands, then tells her the letter he brought was scribbled in a rush by Mrs. Pallet Caputo. Dewey snatches the envelope with wide eyes, scans it hard, and can't believe it. Pallet Caputo herself wrote that letter. The girl eases the envelope open, pulls out a clean, folded sheet, unfolds the letter, and as she starts to read, Pallet's first words hit: Dewey Spade. Then Lady Caputo pens a heartfelt note, begging the girl for forgiveness for her rude behavior, and for not showing up to talk to her face-to-face. And right after the letter lands, more bombshells follow. On that very day, an experienced swordsman shows up from abroad, and he uses the message to reach out to the strongest swordsman in the whole country. While all of that is unfolding, Sun Sui has zero clue that anything is coming. Pallet then writes that he'll spill every last detail to do the moment they meet, and urges her to make sure she visits the Caputo family's lands, straight alongside the swordsman Shirokoro Sansu. Lady Caputo swears in her letter that only Sansui can survive and crush the swordsman who just stormed their lands, because he's a holy sword, and it even wears a child's face. As Dewey reads the letter, the hero's mind races. Who sent this? And he remembers Pallet Caputo isn't just any girl. Turns out the Caputo family isn't just any crew. They sit alongside the Spade House and Battrable House as one of the four great families, and they wield serious power and influence. Once Pallet Caputo steps toward Dewey, you know this isn't some normal situation. Then the girl whips her gaze to the knight and asks if he knows what's inside that letter, and Dewey answers that he's already familiar with every word in it. Dewey fires off a question about what kind of swordsman Pallet Caputo described in her letter, and once the knight hears it, he can't even tell what Lady Spade is really fishing for, so he presses her again for what answer she wants. The knight's confusion hits, and the girl blurts that she just wants to know, like, is he handsome? Then the knight shoots back that the swordsman who showed up is young, pretty lively, and full of energy. Even the knight notes how polished the new swordsman looks, like he's been raised in the best kind of family, so the second Dewey hears it, he wastes no time and decides he has to dig deeper. The knight swears the swordsman is so unstoppable that only Sansui can take him down, and get this, he's a polished, well-mannered, seriously handsome guy. Then Dewey suddenly blurts that this might be exactly the kind of man the girl deserves. At last, Lady Spade fires up her comrades and declares, "We're going to pay Caputo a visit, no doubt about it, soon." At last, Lady Dewey and her crew cash in on her promise, rolling up to the Caputo family's territory with a knight dispatched straight to her side. As the girl and her friends cross the family's property, they spot dozens of homeless, starving people scattered around, yet none of them shut up for a second. Knight turned to Dewey and blurted out, "I'm sorry for the trouble," then added, "Ms. Pallet wants to greet you when you arrive. Don't worry, I'll make sure I bring you straight to her." As the heroes march toward their destination, Sansui suddenly clocks it. No matter how grown-up his mistress, Dewey, looks, she still doesn't have a fiancé. He remembers how, since she was little, that girl could somehow get whatever she wanted, until her own father and brother shut down every attempt to get her engaged, and Sansui can't shake the feeling that they look downright creepy. Even so, the hero can't shake the memory. No matter her older brother or father pushing, that girl never once showed real interest in a man. Suddenly, Rain turns to Brower and calls her auntie, then blurts out that she's got a question. Brower just stares, waiting, while Rain leans in and asks, carefully but clearly, what she thinks about the idea that Dewey might be into this new swordsman. Brower stares at Rain and tells her, "Great question," and Rain shoots back that she's sure the swordsman has his own reasons. Sansui hears that Brower is talking to Rain, and he's like, "Yeah, I get why they're worried, because this meeting could go south fast and nobody can promise it'll be easy." They keep trudging down the packed city street, where everyone piles into a roaring crowd, huddling close to stare at something, and trading excited whispers like they've just uncovered a secret. Dewey and her crew push through toward the crowd, and right away you can feel the confusion. People are shouting questions, trying to spot who's about to throw down, and then Lady Spade realizes the street has suddenly packed itself tight. Suddenly the girl hears it right up front. The aristocrat is locked in a fight with a foreign swordsman, and the crowd is freaking out about how insanely strong he is. Sun Sui hears that too and can't believe the swordsman is a foreigner. Dewey hears what's truly going down on the street, and the shock hits her hard. She can't stop staring at every move, completely hooked by the chaos. Just like that, Sansui spots a Dewey glint in herself and realizes she's got a killer charm. Then the sudden hero turns and locks eyes with this foreign swordsman, dark-skinned, dark-haired, and ridiculously handsome. Just arrived in these lands, the swordsman stares down the knight he already crushed and smirks, saying the people here are tiny, and that they won't snatch his head as easily as they're dreaming. After he finished checking the fallen soldiers the swordsman had wiped out, the hero decides to see how his mistress reacts, and then he spots Dewey. Her face lights up for real, and she stares at that swordsman with straight-up admiration. Brower and Rain, still reeling, stared in disbelief as Lady Spade the swordsman, fresh off just arriving in the country, latched onto them like they were her new favorite obsession. Sansui just stands there awestruck, staring at this brand new swordsman, Dewey, and the moment he does, it hits him. The whole world seems to spin around this guy. Suddenly, Dewey and her subordinates get called out by a sharp female voice from the other side of the crowd, and a smug girl strolls over, smiling like she always knew they'd show up. Turns out the one calling out to Lady Spade and her subordinates is Pallet Caputo. She pushes closer and closer, blurts that she's sorry for the sudden emergency call, and you can see she's genuinely pretty, with dark hair and striking dark eyes. Dewey, dressed up as her old acquaintance, calls her by name and presses her for what's going on with the mess she spilled in that letter. Then Pallet wastes no time and jumps straight into an answer. Lady Caputo kicks off her tail, and just the other day, Tong, the swordsman, came rolling in from some far-off country. Turns out Sir Neri, a noble from the Domino Empire, had kicked up a massive street brawl, sparking a frenzy among the swordsmen after some incident. She says both of them stay 100% convinced they're right to the very end, and neither one is willing to settle this in court. Sansui leans in, hanging on every word as Pallet Caputo spills the tale, and it clicks in his head. He knows exactly where the Domino Empire is. The hero also makes sure to add one huge detail, that this country has only just torn itself through a revolution. Turns out during this revolution, the whole imperial family got captured, and the nobles bolted straight to the neighboring kingdom of Arcana, begging for refuge. He finally gets it. Those nobles who bolted to the neighboring kingdom aren't criminals at all, they just begged for shelter. Sansui can't stop thinking about it. After this, trouble erupts everywhere, and not a single soul knows the real cause. Pallet keeps the tale going, and right after the incident, Sir Neri rides in with his soldiers by his side. Dewey crossed her arms and declared, with total certainty, that she knows exactly who the real culprit is. Then the girl promised that everything would be okay as long as they could hand the nobleman from the Domino Empire over. Pallet Caputo snaps to attention at that, saying they can't possibly do it like this, because they've got to hear both sides and pick the right call, period, and when Dewey catches wind of that, he's clearly not happy. Out of nowhere, Tung, the swordsman, barrels into the conversation and tells everyone he's got nothing to feel guilty about, and he refuses to swallow all the blame for what happened, sounding so sure of himself it's chilling. He blurts out on the spot that if the authorities want to drag answers out of him, they'll have to beat him in battle first. Tung shoots a look at Sanshui, then blurts, "Lord Holy Sword," like a kid playing dress-up, yet the heroes barely even twitch at his words. Dewey flashes a confident grin and tells his subordinate he knows exactly what to do next, while she orders her bodyguard to stand back in the fight, so not a single swordsman battling him gets hurt. Palette Caputo also insisted she wanted Sun Sui to hold back, so nobody would get hurt in the fight. Sansui slowly pulls his sword free and tells them, straight up, they can count on him. He'll do everything they ask, fully and without question. Right before the young man steps into the fight, he flicks a glance at the knights the swordsman already crushed, bodies sprawled out, motionless and unconscious on the ground. At that moment, the knights clamped onto the nobleman Nur with both hands to pin him in place, and when he heard the girl urging Sansui, he snapped to himself that it was insanely stupid to tell him to hold back and not hurt a single soul, because in his mind, that just wasn't possible. Nur can't believe it. How could his loyal soldiers, nobles all in name, get mowed down so easily by that foreign swordsman? And right then, the injured knights from the fight are dragged away to be treated. As the brawl kicks off, the nobleman sneers, thinking the hero is nothing but a petty scrapper, and decides he won't survive even a single heartbeat against those foreign swordsmen. Narai shrugs off the outcome and tells himself it doesn't matter, because if Rich Dewey's favorite subordinate gets killed in battle, then Tung's still going to pay for it, no matter what. Meanwhile, the noblemen smugly decide that if Sansui turns out to be an absolute monster with a blade, the foreigner won't leave that battlefield alive. Narai declares that whatever the situation throws at him, and whatever the battle decides, he's still walking out as the winner. Toon slams out his name to the hero, then fires back that he wants to know who his opponent is, because in this country, the guy he's facing is the strongest swordsman around. The hero then leans in and says, "I'm sure Koro Sansui," and you can hear the excitement. He's genuinely thrilled to finally meet his rival. Brower, locked onto the fight, suddenly realizes Thune isn't the weakest at all. Turns out he's way stronger than he ever looks. Tung and Sansui are set to explode into battle, and Dewey lights up, praising the foreigner as strong, handsome, and downright majestic, so honestly, she's got zero complaints about him. Rain yells to his father that he'll crush his opponent for sure, but Palette can't shake her fear about how this fight will end, and Brower, staring at his mistress, realizes she's got wild, unbelievable luck. Everybody gathered outside that day is itching to start watching the fight about to explode. Dew is all confidence, Palette's got worry written all over his face, Brower stays icy calm, and Nurai can only pray this battle turns out best for him. Both swordsmen lock in, crossing into a dead-straight standoff, blades raised and aimed forward, ready to explode into the clash. The foreign swordsman Tong makes the first move, then unleashes his deadly skill, *** dance of the faithful shadow ***. The second the guy blurts it out, he surges ahead at lightning speed, and the snap of his movement slashes through the air like it's one violent blur. Brower, Dewey, and Palette are in total shock, because the tongue hits way harder than they ever expected. Finally, Tong closes in on Sansui as tight as he can, and before the attack even lands, he shoots it back instantly, clang. The weapons ring loud as they collide. Both swordsmen keep lunging for the kill, but every hit gets thrown back, locked in a brutal, perfectly even clash. Just as Sansui finally lands a brutal sword strike on his opponent's head, everyone's expecting the end, then he vanishes out of nowhere. The shock hits hard when they realize it was Sansui at all, it was his shadow. Tung stares at Sun Tizu's swordwork in pure awe. This time he unleashes the dance of captivating shadows, all business, not play, and suddenly he splits into a swarm of copies around himself. 3 opponents barrel in at once, lunging for Sansui and setting up a merciless beatdown. The hero expertly parries both swordsman clones, driving them out of existence with a brutal strike straight to the head. Then he wipes out the final shadow and locks eyes with the real opponent. Sansui and Tong lock eyes and grin like, yes, we finally found our match. And you can tell by the look on both their faces, this battle is bringing them pure joy. Du schaust Tong bewundern dabei zu, wie wunderschön Kopien von sich selbst Schaft ein Fähigkeit, die man wirklich selten sieht, dan grinst Palette. Sun Tzu worked als would hierer Gerard perfect seinen Job machen. Right now, Nure is wrecked with worry over the chaos on the battlefield. He doesn't know what to do. Brower and Rain stand close by and realize just how insanely strong their comrade is, but no matter that, his opponent isn't any weaker. Sanshui clocks exactly how Tung is fighting, and the hero realizes Tung isn't just attacking, he's trying to bury him under a relentless barrage. Turns out Sanshui clocked his opponent's tactics early, way before the fight even kicked off, and it freaked him out that the soldiers were already covered in scratches. So he figures Tong can only micromanage one of his copies at a time. But here's the twist, the hero knows Tong is still a top-tier swordsman, even without that kind of power. After feeling his own strength edge up a bit, Sansui figures that, based on his body alone, he's probably just a hair stronger than Brower. Out of nowhere, Tung blurts out that this fight made it all worth it, because leaving his homeland and taking that brutal long journey totally paid off. He even laughs and says he can't picture how someone like Sansui, at that level, ever climbed this high. Right then, Tung readies himself to swing again. Bolting from the scene, he shouts that he truly believes Sansui deserves to witness his secret technique. Around Tung, clones of him explode into existence, barreling toward the hero. Then one of them yells that the counterattack is ready to go. Dewey, Pallet, Rain, and Brower stared at the number of copies Toon had churned out, and joy and terror hit them at the exact same time. Turns out the move Tung unleashes is called the Dance of True Darkness. His copies rocket forward like they're flying straight at Sway, but Sway doesn't even bother dodging, like he's got all the time in the world. This attack of Tuna's is a total knockout, an endgame wave strike that weaponizes the enemy's reaction time. Turns out if you try to beat the shadow like you did before, it instantly hits you with a brand new one, right when you can't dodge in time like normal people would. But Sansui, he handles it flawlessly. Tung knows that if he tangled with a normal fighter, he'd be done for already, yet against a master, he can finally look for openings to just graze, and right now the hero slips yet another brutal hit from the shadow. Tong clocks it instantly, then whips his saber over his head, realizing he'd bet on the right guy. Sun Sui could have handled that task all along. The foreigner realizes it right now. This is his perfect opening to strike his opponent. Tung sets his sights on Sansui, ready to end it by taking down the hero with a brutal chop himself, until everything veers off script, shocking him more than he can handle. Tong finally clocked it. His opponent's wooden sword is nowhere in sight, the same blade he used to fight before, and now the man charges straight at him with nothing but bare hands. Toon drops his saber at once, realizing his plan is falling apart, and then, right when he least expects it, something surges through his weapon. Sansui lunges for his saber, and before Tong can even blink, he snatches the weapon out of the air, then drives it straight up to his throat. Tong's mind freezes. He can't move. Dewey snaps, asking Brower what is the battle already over, and her subordinate just shrugs, saying it probably is. Sun Sui refuses to let the fight drag on, slides away from Tung's throat and smirks, saying he's finally got this battle in the bag. Still staring at his opponent in awe, Toon blurts out that in the fight he couldn't even get close to him, so yeah, he's admitting defeat. Dewey grins, whips around to his bodyguard, and proudly declares he nailed it, while Pellet, standing right there, can't stop praising the duel she just witnessed, calling it nothing short of wonderful. Brower, wedged in the crowd, suddenly realizes that when Sansui unleashed all those shadows, the ball vanished from his side. The girl still sees that fight episode in blazing color, convinced the hero is the one who already mapped out Tung's next move. Tung finally admits he totally misjudged Sansui, because even when his enemy throws any technique at him, he's still locked in, convinced that summoning shadows is the one skill that'll secure the win. Sansui hears Tung's words and admits his secret technique is pure fire, then smirks because he can still track every move his opponent throws. The hero breaks it down. Once Tung vomited out all those shadows, he knew exactly what was coming. Either they'd close in and slash him, or they'd blast him non-stop to shove him into opening up. After hearing his opponent's explanation, Toon sprints over to Pallet and thanks her for finally granting his long-cherished wish. The girl perks up after hearing the thanks, then shoots the swordsman a question. Is he ready to kick off a trial about what happened on the street? Toon grins, totally confident, and says he's more than ready, because now it's his turn to give the girl what she wants. Right there beside them, Nuri goes pale with horror at what she just heard. With a calm grin on his face, Pallet whirls toward the nobleman and asks if he's ready to settle the fight in court, only for the man to twitch, terror flashing across him. She reminds the nobleman that just days ago he promised, if Tong agrees to the trial, he'll step in too. Nuri, shaking with terror, blurts out, "This time nothing's going to work, because I've got urgent matters that can't wait." Pallet gets swarmed by tons of knights, but she grins and swears the trial won't take long at all, because this time they've already called in the Civ family's mages, so it'll be over way sooner than he ever expects. Nur, trembling with terror, blurts at the girl to stop spouting that stuff. He swears he doesn't want to tangle with magicians, while Dewey, staring at the scene, can't help but say, "Whoa, this is way too interesting." She whips around to Sansui, spots Nera being dragged off by the knights, and fires off a question like, "So, we're watching that trial, right?" fully expecting him to say yes. Dew strides up to Sansui and tells Rain and Brower, "You don't have to come, if you don't want to, because what's about to happen could totally shock the girl." Rain and Brower shrug off Dewey and Sansui's trial plans and choose a detour, roaming the city streets with no destination in sight. Suddenly, Rain catches voices spilling from the house beside them. When she peeks in, she realizes a girl and a man are talking, and the girl wants to know if he even knows that foreign swordsman. She also swears she saw him challenge a holy sword, wearing the face of a kid, to a duel, and now the guy's just stuck wondering who actually won. The guy fires off a question: has she seen the swordsman's face and what kind of person he really is? Then the girl answers with a chilling truth: the holy sword that wears a child's face. She also says that even if his face screamed kid, he didn't look adorable or stylish, he just looked plain and ordinary. And grills her on what she thinks about Mrs. Dewey marrying Mr. Tong. Brower, after wrestling with it for a long time, says it all comes down to the previous and current chapters, but yeah, he admits there's still a way it can work. Rain says Tuna must have been cool, but Broward slumps and snaps that it just irritates her. Then, after the fight, Dewey finally shows real respect for the swordsman. Suddenly, her smile drops to stone. She turns to Brower and demands to know if she's going to fall for Tuna too. Brower hears it and goes completely baffled. She blurts out, stunned, "Where did you even get those ideas?" Rain's voice turns heavy as she reveals the truth: Brower can no longer marry her father. He shoots back that it's true, and admits this question is probably freaking her out big time. Brower keeps talking and, with a warm smile, recounts how she'd run right alongside Mrs. Dewey from the very start of her childhood. She presses a hand to her chest and declares, "I've always guarded Dewey, so you think I don't understand love." Suddenly, Broward's smile turns razor sincere. Then the girl drops the truth: no matter what, there's not a single person in this world she'd rather marry. Rain, grinning like she just won, tells Brower to get her act together and report the spill to both the girl's father and her mistress, while Brower calmly says the girl is right. At last, Broward and Rain slam into the Caputo estate. Time crawls, and inside one of its rooms, Rain pivots toward Brower and snaps that the moment is here, that the girl says Dewey and Sansui will be back any minute. Brower, convinced Sansui will be back any minute, digs into their old talks and steels himself, because this time he's sure everything's finally going to turn out better. At last, the room's door creaks open, and Rain, still perched in her chair, breaks into a bright grin as she announces that her father and Dewey have finally returned. Lady Spade bursts into the room first, grinning ear to ear, and tells her subordinates the tests they endured were incredible, because they were powered by cursed magic. Since Sway barges in behind her and totally kills the vibe, Rain tries to ask, "Are you okay?" But he mopes out, "I'm fine," and Brower instantly gets it: this is not the moment to bring up marriage. Pallet claims that at the meeting they unleashed cursed magic, so if anyone lied, they'd instantly turn to stone. Then Tun steps in and says that's exactly how they managed to expose the truth in this story. Turns out the noblemen who kicked off that sword-slinging mess weren't chasing justice at all. Near was plotting to hurt the girl, and honestly, nobody's shocked. Dewey also says it was Thune who tried to stop them, so that's why she jumped right into the same fight Brower was in. Brower nods and says, "Yeah, I figured." Toon tells how, right as they stepped outside, their argument detonated, and the boy yanked out his sword. Dewey opens up and tells how, when she finally looked at that nobleman, his expression was pure priceless, so she can't help but burst into a little chuckle. Pallet Caputo admits that to shield their people during the trial, they unleashed cursed magic, and now, with a stone-cold stare, she turns to Tuna and begs for forgiveness. He admits it, he stirred things up in foreign lands himself, blames it on childish excuses, and says he's just as guilty as that nobleman. He whips around to Palit, voice steady and sincere, and tells him the truth: this mess only has one person who owes an apology: himself. Tongue locks eyes with Palit and says getting hit with cursed magic was actually a valuable lesson, plus it's a relief to watch this lying noble fess up with his own mouth, so the girl has nothing left to fear. Brower and Sansui stare at Tongue in pure shock because he doesn't just look cool, his ideas are already brilliant too, while Rain and Dewey lock eyes with the swordsman and can't stop admiring him. Suddenly Tongue whips around and tells the hero, "No matter what went down, I'm just happy I got to see the holy sword clash today." Then he admits, with the pure grin of a kid, that he's absolutely thrilled by how deadly and skilled that holy sword is. Out of nowhere, Toon rockets up from the table, stalks right up to the hero, and leaves Rain completely stunned. Then he drops to his knees and pleads for Sansui to let him become his student. The hero stares at the picture, totally confused, thinking, I just showed off in battle, but the guy can't wrap his head around why the swordsman bows to him. Dew, practically glowing with gratitude for this chance, tells them, no matter what, Tongue can always come to my place. Hearing that amazing news, the boy blurts out his full name in pure joy, Toon Majin, and the swordsman grins, saying he can't wait to receive orders from his brand new teacher. The second they heard the name of their brand new comrade, the whole hall went dead silent, everyone stunned, completely baffled. Pallet leans toward Tong, nervous and apologetic, and asks if Sunny means anything to him. Tong just stares back with a puzzling, unreadable expression. Toon blurts out that the name is his little sister, S, and right after that he demands, "So, how do we even know it?" A nightmare chain of thoughts detonates in Dewey's mind, and she blurts it out to Tong, because it turns out his younger sister just got engaged to Saiga. When he hears that his younger sister is getting engaged, horror hits him like a truck, and he blurts the shocking news to everyone packed inside the hall. He suddenly stands up, blasts out that this is completely unacceptable, and insists he has to fix everything, sending Pallet, sitting right beside him, into panic. Lady Caputo blurts out, totally baffled, that even if she has no clue what cursed the other side's prince, she still can't just kick him out without a proper apology, and you can tell the girl is terrified. Dewey hears this and boils with fury, and right then Tongue snaps his gaze to Pallet, yelling that everything has to be sorted out now, so the girl must delay his departure. Suddenly the dejected Dewey snaps toward the confused Pallet as the guy's desperate pleas hit her ears. She grips her head with one hand and admits this whole mess worries her too, then tells Tongue to just come along with them. So the moment he hears the news, he bursts into joy. Dewey even pushes that it's best for him to tag along, while Pallet can't help but regretfully confide to Lady Spade, and Toon turns to the girl and thanks her for having his back. Suddenly Brower realizes something wild. If Dewey marries into this, his pedigree won't matter at all, because Mr. Thun shocks everyone by turning out to be a real prince. Dewey keeps her hands over her eyes, shoulders slumped, thinking she'll have to become a relative of Hepin, and then this brutal, indescribable feeling hits her. Dewey, Sansui, Rain, Brower, and Toon pile into the carriage to escape the kingdom of Caputo, while Pallet slips outside the city gates to bid his guests goodbye. Then the girl shouts for them to come back again. Inside the carriage, Dewey finally breaks the silence and strikes up the first conversation, claiming they're now headed straight to the Batterable estate to meet Certain sister. Tun lets out a heavy sigh, already stuffed with stories about his sister, and finally figures the truth. She's dumped one big headache after another on the kingdom of Arkin. Dewey slumps and admits that she's not really losing sleep over Tuna's sister. She's freaking out about her fiancé instead, then lets out a heavy sigh, and Brower and Sansui know she's telling the truth. Toon blurts out, grinning, that if you flip the whole situation around, he can't believe it. Sir Sansui is the real deal, a true sage. The swordsman says that in his homeland there's a legend about sages, and after witnessing the hero's strength, he swears he finally proved it real, then breaks down in gratitude for the chance to learn from a master who's been sharpening his sword art for 500 years. Sansui thinks that if he keeps dodging, Dewey is bound to snap, and he knows it'll feel brutal to say no to someone who's bowed so low, so the hero decides, "I'll try." Hearing that, Tongue's face lights up with pure joy, and Dewey chimes in, saying Sansui will for sure help him. Yet the hero can't resist, deciding to clear up one more thing first. He tells everyone that before he even starts teaching someone else, he's going to rush to his own teacher first, begging permission to do it. Dewey coolly says, "If that's all they need, I'll go myself." Then Sansui leans in and admits there's just one tiny snag. Sunsui's smile falls, and he tells him straight up that until Rain grows up, he can't ever step back into the forest. Then he adds that this rule was handed down by the teacher himself. Dewey mulls it over, sighs that there's no way around it. Then after a little more waiting, she snaps that she'll call this teacher herself, because they're already headed for the Happen estate, so they can ask XX for help either way. Toon begs the girl for forgiveness, then quickly blurts out that they do more for him than he could ever repay. Dewey grins and tells him he doesn't have to apologize, because she's got her own reasons to meet her bodyguard's teacher too. Lady Spade even fires off a snarky remark, saying they've got a 500-year-old man who still can't ask a question by himself, so everyone should stop fretting that his help isn't happening right now. Dewey swings to his assistant, and she blurts that Brower was basically about to marry that old man for real. Rain and Bauer both decide now's the moment to move. Bauer snaps up from his seat in the carriage and whirls toward Dewey, and she says she's got to talk about her engagement to Sinusi now that the decision's already been made. Brower clenches his nerves and digs up every last ounce of courage to beg his mistress to rethink the engagement just one more time, and when Senusi hears it, shock hits her hard. Dewey, completely thrown off by the twist, spins to Brower and blurts out, "Are you really sure about this?" And she snaps back instantly, dead certain about her choice. Dewey strides up to Sansui and lays it out. If they're really going to get married, he has to tell his teacher, but first he needs to break everything down with Brower, settle the plan, and only then face him. Brower hears those words and grins, saying he just hopes Sansui's ready, while Sansui, cheeks burning, insists these kinds of questions are better saved for when they're back at the estate. Tung watched everything unfold, grinned, and realized this holy sword was even wilder than he ever imagined. After a long, rough but packed journey, the heroes finally burst through the gates and arrive at the Batcherable estate. They run into the Heppen family in the huge living room, and Tung makes the first move. He starts grilling the guy, firing off how much shame they've dumped on Mrs. Heppen's fiancé. After he hears the royal family, his sister included, plans to keep the bloodline pure, he tells them they'll still be treated like nobles, not scoundrels, but Heppen's closest crew can't hide how uneasy they feel. Toon drops his head and, speaking for their father the king, begs forgiveness for what his sister did. Heppen, the oldest in the entourage, steps forward first, and he tells Tong point-blank that he doesn't have to apologize, not even once, because they'll keep treating the boys with respect no matter what. Tong glares at his sister, dead set on shutting her down. He calls her by name, snaps that she keeps doing whatever she wants, and you can practically see Suni's fear flashing at her older brother. Tan snaps at his sister, furious that she, unlike him, actually gets to claim the throne, and tells her to think about their mom and dad. Suni bows her head, crushed, and admits she has no excuse. Suddenly Toon whips around to Saiga and demands, "Were you engaged to my sister?" And the guy fidgets his way through, insisting he's got every detail right. Toon snaps that his sister is the one to blame, but Saiga won't let it slide. He points out he's in this too since he's already engaged to the girl. Then the guy, voice cracking and stammering, blurts that he really meant it when he said his feelings for Suni were real. Toon growls menacingly that if Saiga's really serious, he must already know what's keeping them apart. Then after a beat, Saiga finally gets how bad it is, and he blurts out absurdly, "Toon, you're right." Dewey lets out a heavy sigh, stares at Happen with pure disappointment, and tells her that Sir Tong and Miss Suni really were brother and sister after all. Then Dewey's totally relieved she didn't end up related to Happen. Right after that, Lady Spade turns to Saiga and declares he'll be the next head of the House of Batcherable. Before Saiga can even blink, he answers instantly. The girl blurts that she wants to meet Swiboki, so she pressures Saiga to hand over the divine sword, while Sansui decides he's going to take a student and teach swordsmanship, but first he has to go ask his own teacher for permission. Heppen and the guy beside him blurted out that the holy sword still hasn't reached full mastery after 500 straight years of training, and when Sansui heard that, he snapped back that compared to his own teacher, he's still just a beginner. Right out of nowhere, a sword materializes beside Saga, then shifts into a boy. XX grins and says their timing is perfect, because he's got a couple things he's dying to tell Swiboki. Suddenly Saiga blurts, "If you're going, then I'm going too, I've got to meet that teacher." And the moment Heppen hears his plan, she fires back, "Fine, if you go, then I'm going with you." Suni swings off the sofa and declares she'll join the upcoming meeting. Right then, and a worried Suga, standing nearby, blurts out, "Is everything going to be okay?" Ejex warns that Swiboki might not love the massive crowd showing up, and Sun Sui, catching his worry, says his teacher won't be bothered by it. Suddenly, the hero snaps and sets the record straight. He swears he's never once seen his teacher lose control over anything. Dewey figures it'll all work out, so they're hitting Swiboki first thing tomorrow morning. Hearing that, Sansui's horror spikes. He realizes he's barely said a word about his marriage to Brower, and all he's ever done is train with a sword. Rain beams up at her father and happily blurts that now he can talk everything about the wedding with the teacher. Then she whips around to Brower and realizes, instantly, that Brower's not happy at all. Brower snaps, convinced Sansui is never going to pop the question to her, and in the next breath, panic flips into a bold idea. Maybe she should propose to him first. Rain's eyes widen in fear as she watches Brower's terrifying mood shift, and neither Brower nor Sansui has a clue what they're supposed to do in that brutal, impossible moment. When Brower and Sansui finally got back to Mrs. Dewey's place, they found themselves alone, just as Lady Spade promised, standing in the mansion's corridor, both frozen, not daring to say a word. Sansui feels like he has to break the ice first, but the other guy just freezes there, clueless about what to do next. Brower clung to her lover's side, panicked that he wouldn't say a word, so she took a deep breath and chose to be brave. Suddenly the hero whips around to Brower and demands she finally say it, so the poor girl panics, blurts out that everything's fine, and promises she'll definitely tell the truth. After that painfully awkward moment, Brower finally realizes she just barged in on Sansui, and her embarrassment spikes even higher. Sansui's sure it's been 500 years since he got dropped into this other world, but for the first time in all that time, being with the girl makes him feel normal. Then he looks back at the noisy Brower and realizes the truth. He's been lying to himself. Right now, the girl is stuck on one burning thought. What on earth will she say to her lover? She knows she can't just blurt out, "Marry me," like that, because it would be downright shameless. And Brower figures this is exactly the moment an ordinary girl would freeze and wonder what she'd do if she were standing in her shoes. Brower finally steadies his mind, shuts his eyes, and then blasts Sansui with a loud, no excuses order to take responsibility. The hero is left speechless by those words, then he vows, "I'll do it for sure," but inside his head he's screaming, "Wait, what am I actually supposed to take the blame for?" Standing by the wall in the corridor, Dewey and Rain stare at the picture, practically frozen in shock while the girl spots it first. The whole scene feels totally, painfully unromantic. Next morning, the whole hero crew storms out of the mansion and crowds by the carriages, ready to head straight for Teacher Swaboki. Sansui and Brower stand shoulder to shoulder. Then the sudden hero grins and blurts that after their talk last night, he and the girl finally decided to tie the knot. Hearing that, the crowd erupts with joy all around them, except for XX, who's standing right out front like the only one who doesn't buy it. Right after that, Rain strides up to Brower and asks, "Is everything okay with the girl?" Brower just shuts it down, saying she'd rather not talk about it. Right in the middle of that super awkward moment, Dewey cuts in and says, "If you two are done, then we're heading to Swaboki, so let's move." They've got to reach that dense forest out on the edge of Arcana's kingdom. Right before everyone scatters, Sansui leans in and orders Lady Spade to pass his deepest respect to the master, and she grins, promising she'll absolutely make sure he hears it. Everyone heading into the forest to meet them is buzzing with good vibes, but XX is the one practically vibrating with excitement for what's coming. Finally, the heroes stumble into the forest, and Saiga can't resist chatting with Heppen, blurting out how shocked he was to hear Sansui was about to get married. Heppen admits she didn't see it coming either, then still steps up to congratulate Brower. After she hears the congratulations, Brower shoots her a grateful look, then Rain cuts in, telling them it's time to end the talk and asking how long they've been walking, while the girl reminds them that once they step into the forest, they'll finally run into Swaboki. Suddenly XX blurts out, "It's totally possible the teacher won't show up, because I'm the one who threw the divine sword." Heppen blurts, shocked, "Why did you suddenly choose to ditch XX and leave the forest, Swaboki?" Ejix pauses and admits he can't say for sure why Swaboki ditched him in the forest, but one idea won't leave his head. Maybe Sword thinks the teacher doesn't need that power anymore. Suddenly, a man's voice slices through the bushes, calling out to XX and making it clear this whole problem was something totally different. Crouched behind a nearby tree, he blurts that he just couldn't stand for his sword to witness how pathetic he'd become. Then everyone gasps when Sun Tizu's teacher suddenly steps out. X blurts out first. He demands to know if the guy standing in front of him is really Swaboki. Then he freezes when he realizes the teacher looks way younger now. Swaboki spots the boys' shocked faces and grins, saying that now he's finally a true sage. He's started looking way younger than ever. Ejix claims he sees everything, then barrels straight into Swaboki's arms, and you can practically feel how wildly happy both heroes are to finally meet. After the boys lay it all out for Swaboki, every wild adventure they survived with Sansui, he finally nods and says he gets it all crystal clear, and then he drops the biggest compliment of all, admitting that in the past 5 years his student has become absolutely incredible. Swaboki also gushes that Sansui didn't just manage life, he raised a beautiful daughter, landed himself a wonderful wife, and even became the kind of man who served his mistress with real devotion. Swaboki also beams that he can't believe Tong, a swordsman on that level, actually wants to be the hero's disciple. The man beams and admits he's thrilled he managed to raise the deadliest swordsman. Then Dewey blurts, shocked, "Wait, Swaboki isn't stronger than him." The man shuts his mouth for now and leads his guests to what he wants them to see before he says a word. Suddenly he rips them out of the spot and drops them into a whole new corner of the forest, instant and brutal. Bauer snaps into realization and fires off. Wait, was that called light step? XX blurts in shock right after, staring at Swaboki as she proves she can use light step on a massive crowd without even touching a single one. Swaboki grins and swears that after XX got imprisoned, he slid into this place and picked up training again. Then all his guests freeze in stunned silence. Suddenly the man snaps Rain's gaze to the stacked stones nearby and declares it's a grave, one meant for the woman who shielded the girl, so Rain must pay her respects. She steps toward it, utterly spellbound. She bends toward the stones, speaks to the soul of the man who once saved her, and pours out her gratitude from the depths of her heart. Swaboki watches with a smug smile, then whips his head away from the girl and fires up the other guests, telling them to pick up where they left off and dig into what the strongest person really means. Saiga goes first with his gut feeling, shouting that a strong person isn't just tough, they're powerful. Swaboki snaps right away that the young man is dead wrong. Being the strongest isn't some fixed title, it's just a goal people chase, so different people define strongest in totally different ways. Suiboki also realizes that his own dream of becoming the strongest isn't just a goal anymore, it's right there in Sansui, walking around and proving it. He lays out how the hero's current form hits people as rock solid, someone you trust, someone worth learning from, even by a swordsman with tongue's level of skill. Saiga can barely contain himself as he begs Suiboki to spill what makes an ideal swordsman. Suiboki calmly leans in and says they know Sansui better than anyone, and then flat out declares that this man's ideal looks exactly like that. He breaks it all down and tells the hero straight up, if you want to hit someone then he'll hit, if you want to defeat someone he'll finish it, and if you want someone dead he'll kill them too because he's capable of that as well. Sansui keeps his head up, works his tail off, and fights to read the situation perfectly. And through it all, the hero never lets his mind rest. He trusts his own power with every breath, the legendary heart of the sword. Suiboki starts laying out his dream swordsman checklist. Love the clash, but don't feed on the violence. Work hard without falling apart when you fail. He has to choose his battles on his own, then share what he knows with anyone brave enough to ask, because a true man of the sword lives by those rules. Suiboki says this is exactly Sansui, and the hero isn't just skilled, he also knows how to teach others. Out of nowhere, Suiboki whips around to Saga and declares he's got his own definition of the strongest. No doubts, no hesitation, and Saga, hearing it, lights up and eagerly agrees with the teacher. He admits he doesn't fully get what the sword's heart really is, but he still has people he'd die to protect, so he grips the blade tight in his own hands. Saiga declares that a swordsman's job is to turn the impossible into reality. Then the boy blurts out, so, if I became Sansui's disciple, would I get stronger? The second this question hits the air, Suiboki snaps back, yeah, I can. Then he adds, almost like he's doubting himself, I might not pull it off, but if it's Sansui, then it'll be possible. Hearing Saiga's name in Suiboki's speech, Toon grins and gently pats her sister on the shoulder, telling her, see, Saiga's actually a really good person. Suiboki snaps his gaze to Rain, sitting by the grave, and blurts out that it hit him like a memory he can't shake. He warns that just days ago a bunch of mercenaries showed up here, hunting like madmen, desperate to find the child. Saiga trembles and asks if Suiboki shared any crucial info, and the man shoots back that there's nothing he's hiding. Heppen says it'd be way better if they knew where these mercenaries came from, and Dewey shoots back that they can barely answer it themselves. Suni can't stop thinking about it. She and the others hunted a missing child who vanished 5 whole years ago. Brower snaps that her words might sting, but she never believed anyone was hunting for Rain. Then Toon blurts that something must have shifted after they left her alone for so long, because he's sure they're trying to use that girl for something big. Happen tries to rack his brain about the big change from 5 years ago, and Dewey hangs her head, admitting through pure disappointment that it's probably all tied to the Domino Empire. Meanwhile, a tense talk is heating up at the Caputo estate. Stando Arcana and Palette Caputo are going at it, because the Domino Empire's brand new government has shoved its army right up to the eastern borders of Caputo territory. Palette spits out that it's all true, and the girl snaps back that they'll make Cernare, and every noble hiding among them, hand themselves over to them. Arcana clocks this as nothing but a thin excuse, just a smokescreen meant to hide the real point. Palette slumps and says it through dejection. After everything they've endured under the last government, these nobles are probably gearing up to invade their kingdom just to cash in on everyone else's wealth. Arcana turns menacing and snarls why she still hasn't gone to the other Grey families, or the royal family, knowing exactly what those strangers are really after. She also reveals the Domino army's new leader owns 4 of the 8 divine artifacts, and that's a disaster for every other kingdom. She blurts it out like it's a secret on fire. Anjiku, one of those artifacts, can make a copy of anything. That's why tens of thousands of new government soldiers gear up in the finest equipment and go into battle with the deadliest weapons. Arcana trembles with horror and blurts out that the Caputo house will never fall to them, because with just them alone, it's completely hopeless. Palette echoes Arcana's "it's hopeless" rant, then flips the whole thing. Maybe it's just like that, comma, and they should think the exact same way. Palette whips her head toward Arcana and says they've seen warriors who are anything but ordinary. The girl points to Saiga, the future head of the Batrable family, and the kingdom's beloved strongest swordsman, Sansui. Then Arcana snaps her teeth shut with rage, remembering the lightning blade like it just burned her. The girl drops the bombshell. Sansui wiped out the royal family's pride, the elite royal guard, and even the lightning blade by himself. She starts trembling with fear and fury, then snaps that even though they got crushed, somehow everyone stayed alive, and nobody got hurt. Palette stays stone calm and tells them straight, only the Spade family can boss around Shirokoro Sansui, the deadliest swordsman alive, and he's been standing his ground for over 500 years. Suddenly, the girl blurts out that the Caputo family's magic is thousands of times stronger than even the best sorcerers in the whole country. Pellet says this mage wields every element like nothing can stop him, strong enough to wipe out not just an army but a whole country, and when Arcana hears that, he leans in, listening like it might change everything. The scarred fool Quove Shanzo is the Caputo family's ultimate weapon, and right now, he's standing up on the castle's high wall, ready to strike. He stretches his arms wide and announces, like it's fate, that it's finally his turn. Just as the guy finally slams through his warm-up, he blurts that his moment has finally arrived, and up on the roof with him, the Caputo family's boss is left staring, completely lost about what the magician is planning. Right then, the head of the Caputo family wraps his knuckles into his fist, clears his throat, and begs Quob for forgiveness, so awkward it's practically screaming in the air. Right after that, the man snaps and tells the magician to kill countless people. Hearing that, the guy doesn't blush a bit. He straight up feels fired up, brushes off the worry, and promises he'll grind hard at work, acting like he's totally, insanely cool. The knights clocked that wild, unhealthy spark in Quoby's eyes and started whispering, will he be okay? Will he somehow slip into the city while fighting? And if he messes up, won't that disaster splash onto everyone? Right out of nowhere, Kubobai blurts that they truly love tough, mind-bending tasks, and the head of the Caputo family is caught off guard. He tells them plain and loud that if Caputo House needs protecting, he'll do whatever it takes, everything in his power. Even now, the family's head isn't convinced he made the right call, but it's already too late to back out, so he leans in and tells the magician that everyone believes in him. Right now, a ruthless army from the Domino Empire barrels toward the gates of Caputo's domain, sprinting without a breath, pounding the road so hard dust explodes into the air with every step. The Caputo family's boss slams down his command and orders Quob Shanzo, their trump card, to hit those gate crashers with a brutal lesson. No mercy, no holding back. Hey, don't waste a single second on pointless thoughts. He snaps, and then he's all business. Any order he gets, he'll follow. He throws his hands high overhead and gets ready to unleash the first hit. Right above Kuobai's palms, a tiny fireball ignites out of nowhere, then swells into a massive, blazing sphere, and the second it's the perfect size, Kuobai hurls it straight at the enemies closing in on the gate. The Domino Knights don't even clock the danger closing in. They're strolling along, laughing and chatting like they're already right on top of Caputo's domain, buzzing with impatience to finally reach the spot they want. Out of nowhere, one soldier jabs his finger at the sky and erupts in terrified screams, and every other knight whips their heads around just in time to see a massive fireball blasting straight at them. They can't believe what they're seeing. Just a few heartbeats, they stare as a massive fireball rockets straight at them, and then one soldier shouts that they've got to get out of here fast, because it's bearing down on every last one of them. The knights don't even get a chance to move. Then a giant fireball crashes down and blasts them into the ground, while their weapons and armor instantly melt from the blazing heat, sizzling with an awful hiss. Once Kobe's surprise attack steam clears, the ground finally shows its damage, a massive crater ripped into the landscape by the impact of something that hit way too hard. The Caputo family's head stares at it all in stunned silence. After what just happened, nobody dares to utter a single word. At last, the Caputo family's head can only drop to his knees and beg God for mercy, and the magician who pulled off the whole attack can't even process it, because he swears he fired just one single shot. Freshly convicted, Nur stares out his window at everything unfolding below, and horror slams into him when he finally realizes the Caputo family has been hiding a magician so powerful it changes everything. The man practically beams, claiming that with a mage like that, they'd stomp the Domino Empire back to its old glory. Then he's yanked out of his thoughts when two loud intruders march into the room without knocking, turn to the nobleman and announce, "We found her." What? Nuri can't believe what he's hearing, so he blurts out, "Are you sure?" And then it hits him. The mercenaries weren't hunting some random target at all. They'd been searching for the final missing piece of the old imperial family. While his comrades lurk in the forest, Sansui stays posted by the carriages, staring down the entrance like he's waiting for trouble to burst in. Suddenly, stomping echoes roll in from the distance, and he realizes someone is closing in on him fast. Turns out the people coming for the hero are none other than Dewey's older brother and his father, Hepin, while a small crew of mounted knights rides in right behind them. Her older brother leaps off the horse first, then rushes over to tell the hero that something urgent has come up. Right behind him, Father Hepin lands on the ground and begs Sansui's forgiveness for catching the boy off guard. Dewey's older brother discovers they reached the forest as fast as they could, because word had spread that the boys were coming this way, and they'd hurried after them. Suddenly, the boy's hand snaps onto the sword's sheath, and he yanks the blade free, roaring that tune, "Whoever he is, better show himself, because someone dared to get close to his sister." Father Hepin clocks the strange tension on his traveling companion the second he sees it, grabs him right away, and snaps that this isn't what they came to talk about, because the guy already knows, and just watching that scene makes you feel painfully awkward too. Father Hepin's words hit Dewey's older brother like a wake-up slap. He agrees the man's right, snaps the sword back into its sheath, and just like that, the hero's rage drains away. The boy stares into the dark forest and blurts out to Sansui, asking if his sister's group has already slipped inside. The hero fires off one of his skills, and the moment he tells where Dewey is, he sees his comrades still in the forest, huddled up and chatting with their teacher, Suboki. Right away, he tells her and her men, "We're going to talk to my teacher." Then the older brother pauses, staring ahead, and says, "We've got to get to those guys ASAP, no delays." Man, it would be perfect if they came back right now. So when the sudden hero spots that his friends are already back, he bolts over and rushes to tell Dewey's relatives. He swears it's pure luck they're already back. Then Dewey, Happen, and the rest of their crew burst out of the forest exit like they teleported there, with a sharp pop in the air. Brower and Suny whip their heads around in pure terror, realizing it's happened again, and Sueboki rips them through space toward the exit, while Dewey and Happen instantly spot their father and older brother hanging around the carriages. Dewey blurts in shock what her older brother is doing here, while Happen asks why her father showed up in these woods too. Then her brother spots the person strolling right beside her. Spotting a face that looks just like the girl's escorting him, Tin blurted that this guy had to be Dewey's brother. Then the swordsman stepped forward and introduced himself. The boy hears his sister's new friend talking and snaps back that it's the same Tongue, spotting how furious Dewey's older brother is, while Tongue, baffled, stares like, "Wait, you got it right." Out of nowhere, Dewey's older brother yanks his sword free, whips it overhead, and swings at him as he roars, furious and yelling that Dewey should die. But he doesn't even get the chance to swing at his sister's new acquaintance. Sansui clotheslines him by smacking the back of his head with a wooden sword and snaps him back to reality. Father Hepin is the first one to talk. He explains that once all the heroes slipped into the forest, Caputo House suddenly reached out to them out of nowhere. He explains that a fresh domino army has marched in to invade, but good news, they get slammed back and scattered by a sorcerer. Saiga snaps in shock, asking, if this army falls, does that mean it's all over for good now? The guy asks and the man immediately shakes his head, denying it hard, because nope, it's not like that at all. Dewey's older brother also swears that once you know House Caputo has a powerhouse sorcerer in its pocket, the kingdom, without a real army to back it up, starts making reckless moves. And he adds this blunt truth, knocking out the brand new regime that just seized control of Domino by sparking a full-on revolution is no small feat at all. He warns that the kingdom might try to snatch this sorcerer and Sun Sui up as bargaining chips just to dodge a full-blown war. After the boy wraps up his story, Dewey's trying to make sense of it all, and then both of them collapse into a pair of deep, exhausted sighs. Dewey's older brother keeps going and drops the bombshell. Ever since Sansui wiped out the royal guard on that day, he's taken over as their new leader, and now the royal family is nursing a bitter grudge against the hero. Dewey, crushed by defeat, presses his hand to his face, lets out a heavy sigh, and spits that even the royal family really lets petty stuff like this twist their judgment. When they overhear the whole conversation, Saiga and Suga are stunned, like they can't even wrap their heads around something like this happening. Finally, Father Hepin declares that once this talk ends, they're sprinting straight to the Caputo family's territory, and he orders every boy to go with them. Dewey blurts out, weirdly calm, that if things are like this, then in their situation, there's only one way to act. She pushes to delay the talk about Sansui's new student, because right now, they're about to roll straight into Cabruto's territory. Suddenly, Father whips around and speaks to Suni in his own tongue, insisting this mess is something neither of them has any part in, it's foreign, and it doesn't belong to them. He blurts out that he doesn't want to burden his brother and sister, then you can tell, deep down, he's basically counting on them to step in. Suni gets the hint instantly, smirks, and declares that the people of Majin don't back down from a fight. Then you can see she's ready to jump in and help. Right after her, Tong starts talking, explaining that he's already dragged Miss Pallet into so much trouble, so if he can actually help, he's not backing out of her cooperation request, not under any circumstances. Sasnui watches everything in silence, calm as a shadow, and she knows, clear as day, that Master Tongue will keep traveling with them. And now he realizes it's all a chess game. If he wants Mrs. Dewey hooked on him, he'll have to watch for the girl's accidental setups, the ones he simply can't say no to. With her mistress's plan burning in her chest, Sansu strides up to Toon, leans in, and asks in a soft voice, if he won't object, will the hero keep traveling with her? Tun hears that request and glances at the delighted Dew, while her bitter brother shoots her a venomous look. Suddenly, the master erupts into loud laughter, shocking Sanshui to the core, and then he smirks, saying he can't be that ignorant about this world either. He's like, you want a guy like me when you've got that much attitude. Seriously, that's the kind of arrogance I'd brag about nonstop. Toon claims he can rule as prince of the Majin kingdom since he's not next in line for the throne, and Suni watches her brother with teary eyes, aching with sadness. Suddenly, the guy blurts out that if Ms. Dewey had said yes to him, then dedicating his life to a foreign kingdom wouldn't have sounded so terrible. The girl hears that speech and lights up with pure delight. From inside Saiga, we hear how Toon picks his words so perfectly and beautifully, and suddenly it's clear that's why he's a prince. Right now, a tense Father Heppen barely manages to stop his furious brother, Dewey, who's trembling with rage and still ready to launch yet another attack. The heroes stride into the Caputo kingdom, and right there, Palette, Kyubai, and the head of the Caputo family are waiting with everything on the line. This is the kind of weird but legendary thing that happens when the big noble house heads, like Spade and Botrable, decide to join forces. Even these families trump cards, their true heroes, showed up and jumped right into the chaos. Everything finally crashes to a head on the Caputo family's territory, right when two strangers suddenly roll in, a young dark-haired guy and an old gray man. Meanwhile, inside the Caputo household, Palette is huddled in front of her family's head, her uncle, right after the court mage just slammed the Domino Empire Knights, and the girl can't hide that creeping worry on her face. When she spots the magician, she blurts out, "Wait, did you just sit by that crater the fireball carved in the ground all this time, while the attack wiped out the knights?" The Caputo family head stares at the boy with a heavy heart and admits it. He can't believe he was truly indifferent to what went down, and the girl, crushed with disappointment, fixes her eyes on Kyubai, who just turns his back and asks if that's really the truth. The man decides if we're gonna boss him around, then we'd better be the ones backing him up too. Palette Caputo locks eyes with Kyubei and makes the call. This has to happen because it's their responsibility too. Without a second thought, the girl strides straight toward Kyubei, who's perched by the crater pit with his legs dangling over the edge. The moment he clocks her coming, he jerks to his feet, grinning like crazy, and greets her by name. Palette Caputo slides right up to the mage and tells him that his family is genuinely thankful for everything he's done, and the moment those words hit, the guy just freezes, not knowing what to say back. Suddenly his face hardens and he demands, right there, if what he did was really worth thanking him for, because Kyubei is clearly terrified about what just happened. Palette clocked the guy's rage and snapped, saying that with the Domino Knight striking Caputo's things, there was no way to move any differently, because if he hadn't fired his magic, the attack would have crushed far more victims. Kyubei snaps his head back toward the crater the fireball carved into the ground, then shoots out the question, was there really truly no other escape from this mess? The girl says, yeah, it's true. Kyubei, clinging to hope, blurts out again, so after what I did, will the war finally end? Palette shoots back gloomily, no, but then she locks in and promises they'll pull it off together, because it's their shared duty, their responsibility. Right now, Du, He Pen, and all their subordinates ride out for Caputo's domain in carriages, tearing themselves away from the forest. Du twists around and glares out the window, letting out a heavy sigh, because that tongue she warned herself about is stuck in the wrong carriage, and she knows it. The girl's brother shoots back, saying it's no shock at all. The swordsman keeps Suni with him in the other carriage because, to him, that's the most obvious way to travel. Awkward silence crashes into the carriage for a few long minutes while Sun Sui, Rain, and Brower glare at the brother and sister with sharp, reproachful eyes. Then Sun Sui finally snaps, asking if there really were people in the forest searching for the master near the house. Brower whips around and says the Domino nobles are the biggest suspects, hiding in Arcana, yet when they meet the mercenaries, Suboki can't pin down where they're really from. Rain whips around to face her father, and with a shaky bit of worry in her eyes, she asks, "Do you think we'll be okay?" Sansui heard her daughter's question and nodded with calm confidence. Yes, it's for sure. Everything will be fine, don't worry at all. Dewey's older brother cuts in, backing the hero 100%, saying that no matter what kind of nobles these people are, Sansui and Brower will guard his sister, no hesitation, even if it means throwing their own lives on the line. And yeah, he also says that as the Spade House's boss, ruling over that whole territory, he's got one job, keep everyone living there safe. Dewey's older brother tightens his fist to the point of snapping, then vows that if he has to shield all these people, he'll happily throw his own life on the line. Suddenly, the guy whips around to Crane and tells her, "From what I can see, you're one of us, so you've got nothing to fear, girl." Hearing those words aimed at her, Rain beams with joy and blurts that guy's speech was absolutely incredible. The boy just won't back down. He claims that as members of the Spade House, they're only doing what they're supposed to, and then he presses her for confirmation of what he said about his sister. Dewey doesn't even flinch, she snaps back with total confidence, saying every word her brother spoke is the absolute truth. And she promises loud and clear, whether it's the defeated nobles, the new domino government, or the Arkan family, nobody will ever lay a finger on Rain's head, not even one hair. Sun Sui and Brower exchanged looks, stunned by their mistress's words because the truth hit them hard. She wasn't acting at all, just an ordinary girl like anyone else. Meanwhile, in another carriage, while the heroes ride toward the kingdom of Caputo, another crucial conversation is already heating up, and Saiga is the first to snap the silence. He whips around to Tung, ready to fire off a question, and the boy blurts it out without a second thought. Does he really see himself marrying Miss Dewey? Then he adds, like it matters, that this choice better be weighed carefully. Since her brother could straight up end him, Suni's heart drops when Saiga says that, so she blurts out to her brother, think again, because this choice is way too dangerous. Tung shoots back instantly. Before he ever became the head of a noble house, he was just Heed's brother, plain and simple, and honestly, with a younger sister pulling in that much attention, what he's doing feels totally unavoidable. Hepin blurts with excitement that the last head was just as devoted to his daughter, and that's why both of them are going to hunt down the swordsman. He knows this full well. Tun fires right back, saying that kind of behavior is totally normal for a father, no big deal. Then he adds one more warning. Once Saiga finally brings his people to meet his dad, he better brace himself because that same reception is coming. When Saiga hears that warning, horror slams into him. His heart stutters a few uneven beats, while the other guy gasps in panic, like he can barely hold it together. The tongue keeps pushing its argument. Why abandon Sansui as his guard when Head is clearly itching to march straight onto the battlefield? He claims Sansui is a perfect match for Head, and he's way stronger than the Domino nobles. Suni tries to stop it cold, insisting that even if this new Spade House head is amazing, she still can't shake the feeling he'll never, ever accept Tong as the groom for his sister. The boy shoots back with total confidence and tells his sister to check out who's standing guard, Sensui the foreigner plus Bauer the girl, and then he promises if their fighting skills are top-notch, he won't turn anyone away. Just as they start talking marriage, Father Hepin storms in and snaps that, yeah, the subject is fascinating. But right now, everyone should shift their focus to the new domino, and Saiga immediately backs him up. The man keeps his story going, pushing the idea that to stop the royal family from turning this war up to max, the four great noble houses have to team up. Saiga says he's already been thinking the same thing. Right then, the Wildermintide guy blurts out, why are these four families fighting so hard to stop the war? Saiga makes it crystal clear this isn't about his past at all. The new dominoes are the ones who stormed into other people's lands, so if the Arcana royal family wants payback, he figures it won't be hard to justify. Father Hepin tells the young man straight up, the new domino is trash right now, but they've still got plenty of earth. Turns out Saiga's scheme was never going to be worth it for the Arcana royal family to march into this country. Saga demands to know what's wrong with this plan, and the man shrugs. If all the Arcana kingdom wanted was to wipe out every troop of the Domino Empire, then just one Caputo sorcerer would have been more than enough. To claim all this land, they'd need a mountain of soldiers, the gear to keep them fed and fighting, and every bit of that support had to come from the kingdom of Arcana. Father Hepin keeps insisting that it'd be downright foolish to toss aside their national interests just to boost the Arcana royal family's image, and Saiga admits he gets why the man thinks that way. Father Hepin snaps that it won't be them paying the price for this plan. It'll be the soldiers bleeding on the front lines and the civilians crushed by extra war taxes, and that's exactly why the four families have to keep this war under control. Saiga knows this won't just be about him. If he's going to lead soon, he has to zoom out and see the whole picture, because the moment he becomes the head of the family, that responsibility is on his shoulders. Turns out 300 years ago in the kingdom of Arcana, a whole new country was born. Ignoring the ones with absurdly long lifespans like Sansui and Swiboki, the sacred sword XX had been around for so long it felt unreal. Everyone in this kingdom knows the truth. Four noble houses sit at the top with power as big as the royal family. For years and years, those legendary warrior families backed the royal line with raw military power, long before the kingdom even existed. This union once held four families. The first was the Spade family, and the next was the Bottrable family. And tucked into this union was a family that welcomed newcomers every generation, the kind, compassionate healers of the Caputo house, fully assimilated and ready to help. And on top of that, the alliance welcomed the Dixie accursed merchant family, those who helped power the royal family back when the kingdom was first born. Turns out every generation the royal family cuts up the map, handing each noble family a territory of equal size, and then dumps a huge load of powerful abilities on top of it. Sure, it sounds great on paper, but in real life, that line means the royal family only rules one out of the kingdom's 5 territories. When the world hits a crisis, those 5 families can team up and smash through it, but then the king can't steer the country however he wants because his power isn't even close to absolute. Like when the Spade family struck back hard at the royal family right after Sansui was wiped out from the elite royal guard. Turns out this country has 4 legendary trump cards. Spade's got Sansui, Botrable's Saiga, Caputo's Kobe, and the 4th hero from Desquia is still a mystery. On top of that, this kingdom clutches 2 of the 8 divine treasures, like XX, but the royal family still can't truly claim direct control over them. While the 4 noble houses clutch their worries over the royal family's reckless moves, the royal family panics at the noble house's sheer power, and it desperately craves a trump card of its own, because honestly that cute little wish is the real spark here. Meanwhile, at the Caputo mansion, another huge conversation is unfolding, because the Stando Arcana is finally face-to-face with the King of Arcana. Turns out the king is her father, so she slips and calls him Daddy, as she lays out how things are in parts of the country, and then she flat out tells him they can't even get close to Fushiyuki. The king leans in and tells them, that man you're hunting now runs the new government, and he's the only one who pulled off the Domino's downfall, taking down their empire like it was nothing. Plus, this character has 4 divine treasures on hand, and he's absolutely not any weaker than the other houses and their heroes, so yeah, things aren't looking great. The king snaps that the real problem now is simple to say, brutal to solve. How do they catch at least one of them for the royal family's use? Stando lanes in, spills his plan, and tells him straight up, this war is the one shot they need to reach their goals. The girl claims the kingdom has a massive edge. Most of their demands got swallowed without a fight, and then she flashes back to the Caputo family's mage launching an attack on the Domino Empire's knights. The man lets out a heavy sigh and admits that even after all that planning, begging the leader to surrender his divine treasures feels utterly pointless. Stando says no matter what, go hit them, then cook up a reason that makes it look justified. The man lays out the daughter's plan and promises that once this is done, they can finally take on rivals, giving the royal family a whole new kind of leverage. Continuing this war isn't in their country's best interests at all, and the royal family will never, ever get the 4 houses' approval. Stendo won't quit that easily. He pressures his father to either surrender more deserting nobles or send food aid. Turns out, the Domino Empire knights marching into the Caputo family's lands is exactly what kicked all of this off in the first place. No one could just sweep under the rug how their aide would look after those people just stormed their territory. Stando even says her father might end up bowing to the Arcan royal family if he pulls it off. The girl sits across from her father, wringing her hands as she races through every possible plan to reach their goal, until an urgent, relentless knock on the door slams her thoughts to a halt. The knock comes from a real knight, and the girl swings the door open without hesitation. He blurts out an apology for barging in, saying a Domino noble named Nur has stormed here to see Stendo because he'll do anything to get his hands on the royal family's magic. King Arcana snaps and asks if this noble is one of the deserters, and Stando blurts out, why didn't that knight chase him off the second he showed up at the gate? The knight claims he didn't refuse just because Nur insisted his conversion was tied to the daughter of the Holy Sword. The king fires the question right away, are you talking about the daughter of the Lightning Blade? But the girl just shuts her mouth and says nothing. After a few tense seconds of thinking it through, Stando snaps at the knight, let the nobleman in straight through and on his way to the royal family. After a little while, the knight drags Nure into the grand hall, where King Arcan and his daughter are already waiting like they've been watching for this moment. The nobleman steps across the room like he owns the moment, then immediately starts bowing and calling out, Your Majesty and Your Highness, as he says it's the greatest honor of his life to finally meet them. Stando gets cut off on the spot by a man demanding they ditch the intro and spill everything about the lightning blade right away, and then the girl fires back, asking if the nobleman has heard anything at all about Sansui's daughter. Nuri grins like a villain and says Stendo is dead on. Rebels are tearing through the Domino Empire right now, and they're calling themselves the new government. The Emperor and everyone tied to him, captured and locked away. Stendo blurts out, what does this have to do with Sansui's daughter? And Nur snaps back, your great former emperor died 6 years ago, and during the fight over who took the throne, the imperial family got wiped out. He claims that the emperor-blooded child and her wet nurse vanished without a trace, and nobody knew where they were until now. Nure pushes his story forward, swearing he hunted the child down relentlessly so the rebels couldn't use her, and at last his men stumble onto leads tied to her wet nurse. Vernit just told me that not long ago, in one forest, the mercenaries he sent to check it out ran into a boy wearing clothes almost exactly like Sansui's. Hearing the man described like that, the girl instantly thinks, there's no way it's anyone else but Suboki, the master of the lightning blade. Nur told them the boy swore a woman had already died, been buried, and that the child was handed over to his own student. The man says there's zero doubt Suboki meant Sansui and his daughter, and the proof is right there. That girl's hair shines a stunning silver, just like the hair of the last emperor. Hearing this tale, the king of Arcana can't believe it. The lightning blade's daughter is really alive, and she's still a domino imperial heir. Nuri just smirks and tells him, yeah, that's absolutely right. Narai goes off the rails, swearing this is heaven sent. If they team up with this girl, Caputo will scorch every rebel and bring the domino empire roaring back, and the nobleman begs the royal family to back them. The nobleman explodes with a loud shout, demanding the king and his daughter explain how they can profit from all of this. The king of Arcana practically can't contain himself. He says Domino and Arcana have been tied together by deep bonds for generations. Nuri drops into a deep bow to the royal family, blurting please, please, please over and over as he begs them to help his people. Stando blurts out that the nobles can just pick any girl as their talisman, and she shoots back, what proof is there that Rain is really the emperor's daughter? Suddenly, a brilliant idea flashes in the girl's mind, and she barrels straight to her father to share it right away. Stando whips around with blazing excitement, and in a rush he fires off to his father, asking fast if Daneslave is in Yukaiu's hands. The Arcana King admits his daughter is 100% right, so this divine treasure should be way easier to handle, but Enrai is left completely lost, staring like, wait, what are you people even talking about? Suddenly the man whips around to the nobleman and, voiced deadly serious, promises he'll set up a meeting with the leaders of all 4 noble houses, so the nobleman will have to tell his story again there, this time for everyone. Shirokoro Sansui knows with absolute certainty that he's living in the Spade House, the perfect trump card waiting to be played. That same killer trump card shows up in the Batrable house too, and this time, it's Saiga from the other family. House Caputo brags about the most powerful sorcerer alive, yet House Dixia apparently has one too, so yeah, each house is rolling with a hero. Finally, the 4 noble houses locked arms and decided to forge their bonds again before they faced the King of Arcana, and when Sansui clocks it, he realizes Caputo and Dixia's trump cards didn't just show up, they're from Japan too, just like his. As the heroes make for the Caputo family, the hero stares out the window, wondering if God's about to drop another stranger into their path. After what felt like forever on the road, the heroes finally haul up to the Caputo mansion, and as soon as they step inside, the Batrable family's boss heads straight for the discussion room, with Happen and Saiga right behind him. Right after them, head leader of the Spade family slides into the room with his sister, Dewey, and Sansui right behind him. The Caputo family's head greets everyone with a warm smile, then thanks them for coming as he takes care of the guests. The head steps up and tells him their kingdom is in big trouble, so of course they had to come to this meeting, and the guy wastes no time, thanking the Caputo family boss for the summons. The Batrable family's head steps in too. He grips the Caputo chief's hand and declares that with both houses united, they'll pull out every stop to save the kingdom. The Caputo family head slams a hand to his chest and says he's damn relieved the other houses can be trusted, right on time, and then Qub, the court magician, spots the arrivals and joyfully sprints to the other 2 heroes. He closes in fast, snatches Saiga's hand with skill and shakes it hard, asking how he's doing. Still getting nothing back, he finally rips the silence open, introducing himself with a burst of energy, shouting, I'm Sujo. Then he goes first, leaning in and asking the guy, so what's your name, Saiga? Before Saiga could even answer, the magician blurted out his next wild theory, saying Saiga's real name was Sun Sui. Saiga awkwardly shot back that nope, his name wasn't Sun Sui at all, and that he was really happy to meet you. He realizes his new pals are way too wound up, and as chaos unfolds, stunned Dewey and Happen just stare, totally lost on what's happening. Kyubei just clocked that Saiga was right there, and he bolted to Sun Sui, determined to meet him before the moment slipped away. Right after their last words, the guy blurts it out. He suddenly remembers the hero was just in Caputo, and the whole time he's stuck there regretting it hard because he never got a chance to meet the strongest swordsman. This time, Kyubei snatches his opponent's hand again, shakes it wildly from side to side, and beams that he's finally thrilled to meet him, while calmly, the other guy smiles right back and says he's just as happy. Dewey shoots Pallet a judgmental look and barks, so who's this guy? The same one who just met her bodyguard, and when Pallet looks totally stunned, she blurts out that he's Caputo House's main trump card. While Dewey keeps watching Kyubei grin and chat with the other 2 heroes, he blurts out that this is the same sorcerer tied to a massacre that slaughtered tens of thousands of soldiers. After meeting Kyubei, Sansui can't help smiling, thinking Caputo's place feels warm and welcoming, while Saiga decides every single person there is genuinely kind. Suddenly, a man in long clothes bursts into the room where the three families are gathered, cackling like a maniac. The old man trails them and a young dark-haired guy tags along, still grinning, until the laughter dies down. The old man leans in and demands what they've got, and the guy answers, "I see a lot." Turns out that old man is the head of the Dixia house, and the guy tailing him is Yukiashin. Then a tall, dark-haired, stunning girl strides in too, claiming her name is Pandora. The moment the man steps in, Head speaks up, saying he's thrilled to see him healthy, and the Botchable family's leader jumps in with a warm greeting, praising the Dixia family as allies like they've added 100 more people to their side. The Dixia family's boss rushes up to the Caputi family's head, clasps the old man's hand, and admits he feels bad for making him trek all this way for something like this, only for the old man to snap back that there's no use flattering old people. Sansui spots the guy who barges in right after the Dixia family's head, and instantly realizes he's trouble dressed up as a normal person. The hero swears he feels nothing from this man, but then, whoa, an ugly, ominous aura starts pouring out of the woman standing right beside him. Out of nowhere, the sword riding on Saiga's back erupts in blinding light, then bam, it morphs into a boy and drops hard onto the ground. XX grins as they stride up to Pandora and bursts out, "I can't believe it, it's been ages since we last saw each other." Pandora grins as she meets her old friend again, looking down at him like a giant because she's way taller. Saiga blurts in shock, "Wait, do you know this new girl?" And the boy snaps back that the question is way too inappropriate, then adds, "Pandora's a divine treasure, just like XX himself." Turns out the majestic Pandora isn't just a legend, she's guarding the cursed armor of calamity, a treasure tied to disaster. The second Saiga pops into view, Pandora whips around and demands the guy confirm if he's the new owner of XX, only for him to snap back that she's totally right. Once XX gets her a clear yes, Pandora explodes into mocking laughter at him and his master. Saiga can't figure out why the girl reacts like that, so she snaps her gaze to the sword and demands, "Did its old master really toss it aside after all that bragging?" Right then, XX explodes with fury. Pandora whips around toward Sansui, steps right up to him, and demands to know if he's the student of that monster. Then the hero snaps back that if she's talking about Swaboki, she's dead on, and that makes her question hit even harder because Swaboki is his master. Hearing that, Pandora's face falls dark and she snaps at Sans to die in the fire, while the hero instantly panics, terrified of what she'll do next. Pandora snaps into an angry rant, calling this her absolute worst nightmare, saying a monster like Swaboki shouldn't be allowed to reproduce because he's already bad enough by himself, and then blasting, "This is outrageous." Suddenly her mood flips, and with little quick steps she marches straight toward the same familiar Shun, who keeps that calm face like nothing's wrong. When she finally closes in on the boy, Pandora reassures him like everything's going to be fine, then she pushes him to slaughter them all right now. After those words, Shun snaps his eyes shut and begs Pandora, "Don't start acting so weird." Pandora snaps back that this is totally normal, then fires a furious question at Shun, "So why were you born if you're not going to live your own way?" The girl says this whole mess is pure YOLO, like you cram everything into your heart, then regret it with your whole soul instantly, and Shun just sulks, snapping back that he needs her to shut up like right now. That girl snaps insults at Shun, but then boom, she goes dead silent, and Sansui, watching it all, whips around to XX and demands, "So your master really did mess with Pandora?" XX tells them that around 2,000 years ago, Swaboki went on a brutal rampage, mashing a girl to pieces and even killing her owner, and Pandora's jaw drops from how messed up it is. Sansui can only stammer that, yeah, the story is insanely intense. Right then, the Dixia family head blinks in confusion, searching the room and demanding where his granddaughter vanished, when the door suddenly bursts open. With a sharp cry of "I'm here," the room's door bursts open and a girl rockets inside, claiming she's the new head of Dixia and her name is Akral. Turns out the new girl is actually pretty, light hair, light eyes, and this huge smile, and then everyone in the room snaps to it. The girl who just burst and sprinted straight here completely naked. Shang sees it and bolts forward, snatches the girl in a blink, and hauls her back into the corridor before anyone even registers what just happened. Shun storms into the hallway, snatches up a krill, and blows up at her for showing up to the meeting half-dressed, only for her to grin and admit she'd been secretly hoping he'd notice her coat and prove to everyone how good friends they are, while Pandora once again prays for a krill death. Dewey slumps, staring at Acro like nothing's ever changed, and Happen cuts to Saiga. As a future leader, he's got to learn how to work with that woman. Meanwhile, Pallet watches her and recalls how she's been the same since those days, back when they were just kids. Chief Caputo grumbles that his colleague's drowning in work, and Chief Dixie can't stand the thought of him being alone, just Acral by his side. Father Happen nods along, and Head says at least the girl shows up the moment the chief calls her. Suddenly, Kyubey blurts out that he's damn glad the Dixia house didn't take him. Sansui and Saiga snap back in agreement like, yeah, truer words have never been spoken. At last, the four heads of the great noble houses and the king finally squeeze into the same room, all eyes locked as they hash out what to do with this new government that's taken over the world, and right now, they're sitting around a big round table in the conference room. The king of Arcana goes first and he asks, so about the battle we just fought. The man nods and says the house of Caputo fought like legends, then requests the king's thanks. Right after those words, Caputo, the head of the house, pops up from his seat, bows deep to the king, and declares that serving him is an honor. The man says those charging warriors were just a big army loaded with factory-made weapons, armor, and plunder, and the king fires back that House Caputo crushed them and did an amazing job repelling the attack. Right after those words, the Caputo house chief steps in and declares that as the guardians of Arcana's eastern lands, they're only doing the duty they were given. Right after the head of the Caputo house speaks those words, the memory hits him, Kyubey's terrified face right before he wiped out several thousand people all by himself. Right after that, the Caputo family's head whips back to the king, shows proper respect, and asks straight to his face if he can finally speak his mind. The man kicks off his speech, calling out the chaos the new domino government sparked, then insists that because they're a powerful nation, it's the smart move to chase peace. He asks if we rewrite what the Caputo house leader said, doesn't it mean the man is begging for mercy, for the country that invaded their lands? The Caputo household leader snaps back that they've wiped out so many of the Domino Empire's troops that the army must be nearly gone, and as he talks, he can't stop remembering the mage's deadly strike. House Caputo's head snaps that even if they patched things up, they'd still clash over a few points. Batcherbal, the head of the house, snaps to his feet and backs the Caputo family, because the threatened ground is theirs, and the ones who stopped the soldiers' charge were theirs too, so everyone here better fall in line with Caputo's demands. The Batcherbal family head even claims the invading army was wiped out completely, so the kingdom of Arcana won't be shamed, and you can still tell the king isn't buying it because he's clearly not happy. Suddenly, the king of Arcana drops the bombshell that he's got one specific topic he wants to discuss with all four major houses. He barks for the person behind the door to step in, voice steady and controlled, then all four heads snap toward the newcomer as they enter. With a cautious step, the man slides into the room and in a soft voice, begs for forgiveness for his sudden, totally unexpected intrusion. Turns out this guy is Nare, so the king of Arcana declares, a nobleman from Domino who fled here looking for refuge, and Nare just stares at the four house heads around the table with a smug little arrogance. Not a single one of the four family reps gets why some noble from the Domino Empire is in this room right now. Meanwhile, Nure dramatically bows and humbly announces that he's honored to present himself before the respected Council of Arcana, and he can't wait to speak here. The nobleman admits that while he was digging through his private case, he stumbled onto some shockingly unbelievable information he never saw coming. He realizes the clues he uncovered all point straight to the holy sword, Shirokuro Sansui, and to the girl everyone calls his daughter, Raven. Suddenly, Nure blasts out a declaration. This kid is the real heir to the imperial family, and that means their Domino Empire is theirs to claim. Hearing that grave statement, horror and confusion exploded in his chest. He was so stunned he couldn't even find the words to answer. Meanwhile, Nare keeps yapping that, thanks to the sorcerer's power from the Caputo house, they'll finally wipe out those so-called rebels calling themselves the new Domino government. And as he talks, you can see the grin of a man who's damn proud of his own master plan. The nobleman's face contorts into a nasty grin, and for a second he almost looks unhinged. Nure pushes forward and says they must announce Her Highness's reign as the new empress, because then they can finally bring the Domino Empire back to glory. The moment he snaps and loses his composure, the man blares that the kingdom of Arcana won't just help them, it has to, no excuses, and right as that wild speech hits its peak, one of the four family heads cuts him off. Turns out this guy is the Spade family's head. He snaps at Nuri, spitting out that mangy mongrel from Domino, and Nuri fires back that after the king of Arcana called him out for a talk, his head somehow blew up. With rage blazing in his voice, Head snaps that the man's plan is pure nonsense, because the guy honestly can't wrap his head around using his servant's child for personal gain, so he immediately shuts it down as completely unacceptable. With his head practically blazing in rage, he snarls that Nuri's impudent head should drop straight to the ground and roll there, and the nobleman's knees start to shake with pure terror. Head's furious rant gets cut off when the head of the Dixia house storms in, snapping at the Spade house leader to hold up, because that kind of mess will just smear the pricey carpets with dirt, and you can tell the Dixia boss isn't happy with what he just heard either. He whips around to the King of Arcana and basically yells that he can't believe the man actually fell for such a dumb story, then turns to warily and demands, "So are you going to back him up?" The old man keeps talking and nails the truth. Nuri doesn't save away a single coin for his own dream. He just sits there, waiting for the heads of the houses to pull out their wallets and hand him help. The Dixia leader snaps that they can't dare to use their kingdom's money to bail out another country, and asks if that wouldn't be a betrayal of Arcana's taxpayers. Suddenly, King Arkan snaps that Nuri's plans had nothing to do with his intentions, but he still leans on the heads of the houses and demands they think again, just a little. He claims that Fushi Yukio, the new government's boss, has locked every last member of the Domino imperial family behind bars, and that he's got one of the 8 divine treasures. The Dainsleif blade, a weapon with a downright annoying power. Suddenly, Head jolts in terror. This blade doesn't just cut, it homes in on anyone who shares blood with the man he came from. The king backs the boy's claim, then slams down his promise. If the Lightning Blade's daughter really is tied to the old emperor of the Domino Empire, he'll never let her run wild, no matter what. The Spade family's head jolts in horror, because that tiny bit of rain could have left little Rain carrying the crushing weight of the entire country. The Arcana king leans in and says the boy's right, then lays out the brutal truth. Just making peace on the surface won't be enough. The King of Arcana turns to Nure once more and warns that his kingdom and this brand new Domino government need to start building friendly ties before trouble explodes later. The nobleman isn't having it. Indignation flares on his face. Right after those words, the King of Arcana finally settles his nerves, heaving a heavy sigh, then turns to Nuri and tells him he's had enough, so it's time to leave the room. Hearing those words aimed at him, the nobleman's face flushes with rage, but when he can't find a single reply for the king, he just freezes on the spot and trembles in silence. I stood there for 2 more seconds, then Nier snapped around, bolted out of the room, and slammed the door so hard it shut the whole place. The King of Arcana suddenly realizes he can shift the conversation to the next part, and the man snaps upright, ready to launch into his speech. He claims the 4 feminine treasures, each one housed separately, all unleash totally different powers. Take the artifact on Jaco. It can churn out perfect copies of any man-made object on demand. Another artifact, the Vajra, hands its owner total command over the sky, bending the weather to their will. That same Dainsleif, yeah, the one I mentioned earlier, slices anyone he can, drinks their blood, and even goes after others who dare to share their blood with him. And the final piece, the elixir, can literally rewrite fate, so its owner slips past death like it's nothing. The King of Arcana swears the enemy nation's nightmares are on Jaco and Vajra, yet right now, it's elixir and Dainsleif stirring up way more chaos and pain for the kingdom. The man declares that as long as the enemies still clutch a Dane's sleeve, they can conjure rain on command, no matter where she sprints. And if the enemy's holding that elixir, the Arcana kingdom can't beat them, no matter who tries, not even someone with power as brutal as the Lightning Blade. The head of House Betreble snaps that if the king's word is true, and if Rain really is Emperor Domino's rightful heir, then she'll be forced to live her whole life running for her life. Head speaks up serious and steady, swearing that he already promised Sun Tzu and Rain he'll take care of them for real, and even though his voice is confident, you can see the depression and worry weighing heavy on him. Right after that, the head of House Spade snaps that if Rain might be a target at all, they're not walking away from their enemies. No excuses, not even a chance. The Caputo house boss is panicking. We've got to negotiate with Yukayu, because if they don't, their kingdom might lose its strongest swordsman for good. Then the Dixia family's head presses him. Can we use sending aid as a cover to talk to the opposition? And warns, if you're happy with this plan, understand this, our people are already as good as gone. King Arcanus' expression turns grim, and his voice hardens as he snaps that this is exactly why he called all 4 heads to the meeting, because only teamwork can protect the kingdom and keep it safe. The King of Arcana and the 4 noble house leaders huddled together, trying to figure out how to handle this brand new domino government. All of us, me included, plus everyone else who'd shown up at the Caputo mansion or was staying inside, crowded together right outside Suzhou's house. The magician himself spots the crowd pouring in, and his joy explodes so hard he can't help but say, right out loud, that he loves every second of it. Suga, perched at the same table as Pallet and Cube, snaps, so why are both of you cursed? And the girl answers without flinching, she can speak about it only because she's the one who cast the curse. Suzhou hesitates, totally thrown off. This dude claims his magic used to kick in by itself, so he ended up blowing his own house sky high again and again. As he says it, Suzhou suddenly remembers how freaked out Pallet looked when she first saw him. while Suni, still seated at the same table, says again that Kyubai's magic can fire off without him even realizing it, giving the boy the power to smash the building. Suga fires off a sharp, sarcastic question, like, seriously, that could happen, and the way he says it screams that it sounds almost impossible. Pallet, lost in deep thought, says that to stop his magic from triggering an accident explosion, they cast this curse, because they're the boy's guardians. Turns out, without Caputo's stamp of approval, that young man can't cast a single spell, so he digs in and leans on his raw talent instead. This time, Pallet goes even further and spills the real reason Sujo's still alive out here, so far from every other settlement. The young man grins and says it's a good thing he didn't wreck his house, but then he admits he's terrified to live in the city center, not just for himself, but for everyone around him too. Kyubai admits living this far out could be a pain, but no matter how long the distance stretches, his place is still his home. Right then, Dewey watches Saiga laughing it up with Sansui and thinks, so that's it, she really did just go and become her bodyguard's apprentice. Happen sits across from the girl and blurts out, do you see anything wrong with my question? And Lady Spade shoots back that everything's perfectly fine. Dewey suddenly grins and blurts that the next leader of Bachelorly House will soon be learning under her bodyguard, then Happen's fury explodes on the spot. She snaps at Lady Spade and fires back, saying that if this is Saiga's training, he'll blow past his teacher in no time, while Brower and Rain at the very same moment sit there stunned, thinking these scenes are downright disappointing. Rain just uncovered the truth and it hit like a punch to the gut. She'd been told there's a high chance she's a descendant of Emperor Domino, and once that sank in, worry swallowed her whole. Still, she carries on exactly like she always has, because everyone around her treats her right, and she's got zero reason to worry. Sensui finally realizes the comrades he teamed up with Rain aren't just allies, they're straight-up good people, and that realization hits hard as he looks around at everyone who's basically become his family. Right then the hero snapped around to Saiga and Toon and declared, all right, time to get back to business. Sansui steps in front of the boys and declares that from this moment on, he'll train them, both of them. Then the boy chimes in, saying he learned his ball-handling skill from Master Sui Boki. Toon and Saiga, hearing that, burst with gratitude and thanked Sui for the awesome guidance he just gave. Pandora sat at the table, staring at the picture, and the girl snapped, don't thank anyone, sharing lessons from a monster like that just makes me furious. Sansui glances at Pandora and thinks, man, my words are brutal. One of the master's victims is hearing this, and it's going to hurt like hell. At that moment, Shun whips around to Pandora and tells her, in no uncertain terms, that the Swiboki didn't do anything except rip her to shreds, yet the guy still acts like that's not even a real reason to hate his master. The girl snaps her head to Shag and digs her heels in, firing back to prove that those old events don't shake her anymore, making his comment land as totally out of line. Suddenly, Akril, sitting right beside Pandora, leans toward the girl and demands to know why she despises Master Swiboki so fiercely. Pandora listens to the question for a second, then snaps back. Her hatred comes from the fact that this man has 0 weak points. Swiboki is flawless, untouchable, and somehow feels stronger than all of humanity. And she adds, I hate you too, because he's immortal, so whatever she says, it all feels pointless. All she can spit out is the same boring line, die. Pandora leans in and asks Shun if he got what she meant, then he shoots back that girls are the best to die. Hearing Shun's words, Akrella leans over like, that guy's awesome, but then she can't stop talking about the disgusting way he looks and the way he treats girls like trash, and Shun just replies, then you should die too. Saiga acts like he never heard a word, then keeps clearing his throat, turns to him and tells him, straight up, that he's heard Saiga has been training his guts out in kendo. Saiga blurts out that he's got 0 skill, so he decides this is the best way forward. When we ask the boys if they want to learn sword fighting, they don't answer, so he snaps that you can't just go for the opponent's head, body, arms, or legs. In a real fight, there are tons of deadly targets. Thun, thrilled that training has finally kicked off, quietly writes down the truth. He's sure the hero's completely right. Saiga hears his teacher's verdict and blurts out, so it's really fine to cut people's legs. Sansui's jaw drops, because if it weren't, then what's the point of the lesson the guy's being taught? He also remembers his student always crafts leg armor with support magic, and the hero snaps that it's frowned on in competition, but it's still a crucial option. Sansui moves in on Saiga and finally admits the truth. Most of the time, he's barely even using the full power he has. Disappointed, Dewey just stares at all of it, then whips around and tells Saiga straight to his face, you're an idiot, and the moment he hears it, Saiga's eyes go wide in shock. Confused, Sansui keeps talking, saying swordsmanship has tons of freedom, so you'd better drop every dumb prejudice swordsmen cling to about how fighting should work. Dewey keeps smirking, saying his thoughts are so simple they don't even inspire. Then an outraged Happen snaps and demands the girl stop her speech. Sansui turns to Saiga and tells him everything's fine, because this is exactly how every amateur kicks off his journey, and Dewey wastes no time roasting him again, reminding everyone how badly that kid wanted to jump into a fight, which instantly boils Happen with rage. Sansui whips around to Dewey, still laughing like nothing happened, while Saiga's mood stays sour, and Tong, standing right there, blurts out that it's amazing Dewey never holds back. Fuming with rage, Happen whirls on the hero and snaps. How dare he let his mistress throw such vicious words at her Saiga. Dewey then fires back. She keeps saying all of this only because she hasn't slipped up and said a single bad thing yet. Every word pouring out is the purest truth. Saiga sits on the ground and declares he's already made up his mind, so he'll go all out with everything he's got, and when Tung watches that, he's blown away by how insanely powerful his comrade's fighting spirit is. Happen locks eyes with Saiga, sparks of inspiration blazing as he realizes this road will be brutal, but he refuses to quit because he's only just begun. Sansui is beaming as he hands Saiga and Tong to kick off their training. Then he spots someone closing in fast, and the hero snaps his head around to see who it is. Every second, the man presses closer to Kyubai's house, and this isn't some safe little neighborhood. The new domino government of Arcana is packed with danger. Their messy lives still haven't detonated into full-blown chaos, but these people are wrestling with something even wilder, how Rain is born. While Dewey is talking to them, both girls spot a creepy, middle-aged man closing in fast, and the hero snaps into focus that he can't ignore his own responsibilities. Out of nowhere, the stranger who strides up to the hero snaps straight to Sansui, only for it to hit. He's a nobleman named Nur, and it looks like he just slipped out of Caputo's domain. Right behind him, two more knights close in on the hero. One blurts that it's been way too long since they last saw each other, and the other points at the kid and calls him a holy sword, baby-faced and all. Sansui spots these people and instantly knows he has to fight to keep his loved ones safe. While out in the new domino government's territory, something huge is brewing inside a massive castle. In one of the mansion's many rooms, a dark-haired man sits with a chessboard staring back at him, 4 mysterious objects laid out nearby, while he studies every single piece like it might bite. Right beside him, everything lies perfectly still. There's a spear, a cup, a mirror, and even a dagger, all frozen in place. Lost in thought, the man mulls over a sorcerer who could wipe out the new Domino Empire's forces with terrifying ease. As he slides the king to a new chess square, he can't believe it. Someone like this actually lives in Archon. Even though his mouth says one thing, his face gives nothing away. He doesn't look bothered at all. Sure, he's stunned by what just happened, but the moment it's over, he snaps that they only came to play, and out here, getting a fair chess game is that simple. Right after he finished his words, the man shot up from the sofa, shocked to find that someone this rude had the nerve to mess with their plans. The second the man stands up from the sofa, the objects that have been sitting beside him this whole time suddenly ignite in blinding white light. The man smirks and tells him, sure, a loss is a loss, but dropping one battle doesn't kill the war, so don't call it the end. Turns out those 4 objects lined up by the man are the exact same 4 treasures he mentioned earlier, and with steel in his voice, he vows he'll never quit, fighting to his very last breath. He swears he'll keep fighting until the Emperor's blood stains the ground, and then he'll erase himself from existence completely. Smiling bright at their new master, these 4 artifacts are already fired up to win. Meanwhile, Nure, fresh off leaving the Caputo estate, closes in on Sun Sui and calls out just to get his attention, only for him to shrug and say, it hasn't been long since we last met. Suddenly the man realizes luck is on his side, because tons of high-powered people are all gathered in the same spot. First, he locks eyes with Dewey and Happen, then his gaze snaps to Palette, Pandora, and Acrylic. Even after the king and the powerful families basically turn their backs on him, Nure decides he won't give up, he'll go after their kids instead. The nobleman decides that if he's really going to win over these kids, then a little flattery is all it takes, because he's sure it'll work. In his mind, if you've got the same talent for persuasion, swaying the kids to your side is basically as easy as stealing candy from a kid. Right when the hero can't figure out why the stranger is coming at him, the nobleman blurts that he's a holy sword with a baby's face. Sansui snaps rigid, spins toward Nur, and demands to know why he showed up and what he's after. The moment the question hits, that man's face instantly flips into a smug, sweet-smiling arrogance, and he says, way too sure of himself, that his whole visit to the heroes is crystal clear, because Mrs. Rain is the Empress of Domino. Nur whips around to face Rain and blurts that he's here to beg for alms, because Mrs. Rain already went and did it first. Right off the bat, it's clear the girl has no clue what he's saying. Then Brower steps in right beside her and with a calm voice tells her everything's okay and there's nothing to worry about. Sansui hears the man's words and snaps back, Rain isn't there anymore. Then the guy hits him with the truth. She's already claimed her spot in the spade house. Rain hears it and finally exhales with relief, while Enrai won't back down, insisting that even if that's true, Lady Rain still has a shot at becoming empress, and the heroes should rally behind her for that huge, legendary goal. She keeps insisting that once those girls become empresses, her future will light up like never before. Suddenly, Dewey jumps in and the girl fires off a sharp question. Why does it look like the Spate House guarantee is so shaky to him? You can tell she's not exactly thrilled about seeing their old acquaintance again, either. After the girl fires off those words, Nure blurts out excuses at once, insisting that's not what he meant, while the man's body goes tense instantly. At last, he clenches every last bit of strength, hurls a fist forward, and shouts for everyone to hear, because in his eyes, nothing beats the joy of a girl becoming an empress. Nur lays it out. Unlike the Archon Kingdom's parliamentary shuffle, the Domino Empire answers to one monarch, the Empress, and for her, the whole empire will spring into action and follow her every command. Nier just keeps going, screaming that their Empress calls are law, her orders are untouchable, and nobody dares question them, because if you're unhappy, punishment is coming. Right after those words, Cube, sitting beside him, cuts in fast, feigning pure boredom, then swivels to Nure and snaps that this is exactly what got their country wiped out in the past. Pallet, sitting right beside him, chimes in. She snaps that this nobleman only cares about greed, and that kind of selfish focus is heartbreaking because it turns everyone's life into suffering. Nure hears those words aimed at him and instantly goes red, stumbles back a couple steps and blurts, "What are you saying exactly?" Suddenly he erupts in shouting. He won't stand for young people to say things like that, especially since they haven't truly lived and can't possibly understand. Right then Heppen steps in and cuts the conversation. She snaps that ever since long ago, the King of Arcana shut down any talk that the Rain could one day become an empress. Nure stumbles, then blurts out that he's out to unmask the rebels who dare call themselves the new Domino government. He tells everyone packed in this place that they're the ones who will shape the future of the Kingdom of Arcan, and to make that future real, they'll have to pay the price and put in the work. Saiga hears him out, then shoots back, "I'm right here, and these guys are the future leaders." He adds that from now on, they're bound to follow every choice the king and the leaders in power make. Seeing how their beloved reacts, Sunny and Suga light up with joy, smiling softly like their hearts just warmed. Tan swivels toward the guy and nods hard, praising how perfectly he picked his words to get his point across. Suddenly Akril erupts in laughter, taunting the swordsman as backwards, and that wild jeer snaps Near right around, shocked. The Echidna girl stares at the nobleman, bursts into laughter, and declares that House Dixia is ready to cooperate with him, and the moment he hears it, pure joy lights up his face as she rises from her chair and strides right toward him. Right when they finally get close, Akril tells Near they'll team up, only if she can hand over enough money to pay them, and then they'll happily sell their whole military. Acrylic promises a fair price so nobody has to haggle, and the girl shrugs it off like it'll be quick, tight, and spotless. Then she immediately flashes the man a clear gesture. The nobleman, spotting it, sneers that Akrila is small, and the girl whips around to Shun laughing, asking why that guy won't speak up too. Shun stays cool and talks straight to Sanchui, Saiga, and Tong, and the guy snaps back, asking if Shun's sure he's right about all three of them being swordsmen or something. The nobleman snaps furious, demanding to know what any of this has to do with the possible deal, while Shun, still facing the heroes, waves it off and tells them there's no time to waste on this guy, calling him a toad. Shun fires back at the guys to wing it and get Nure to pack up his stuff, the way Shun decides is right. Staring at the nobleman trembling with rage, the guy coldly says he'll never be able to resist them, and the moment those words hit him, the bitter man erupts that he can't stand to be around people like them. Nur sneers to himself that every guy in this place is pure nerve, talking to him like that as if he's nothing. The man snaps he can't play games with the heroes anymore, and rage and despair crash through him all at once. As soon as Shun finishes those words, an admiring acrylic girl barrels toward him, flings herself at the guy, and clamps onto him in a tight, unshakable hug. She clamps onto the young man even tighter and tells him with a grin that he's seriously cool. But the girl insists he went way too far with his last move. Hearing that accusation fly at him, Shun fires back that he only said what was on his mind, and tells the girls to back off and leave him alone. Suddenly Acrylic shoots Shun a few more compliments, then lays it out. The guys were kinda rough when they talked to the noble, except Dewey, who wasn't like that at all. Dewey grins at Akril and tells him the girl's been locked in during the whole conversation, while Brower wrestles with one burning question: did Akril just call Dewey a compliment, or something else entirely? Right after that, a slightly confused Suga presses, asking if it truly was for the best. A cheerful acrylic insists everything's perfectly normal, but Saiga can't buy it for a second. There's no way this situation counts as normal. Wearing a smug smile, Akril brags that their country decided long ago to wipe out people like that, calling them nothing but leeches. The girl adds that everything after this is totally up to the one who got the power. What they choose to do next decides the whole future. Acrylic flat out warns that if this guy's a total moron, even their royal family will want zero to do with him. Suddenly XX drops in from behind Sega and cuts straight into the convo, telling the guy there's nothing to worry about and they should bury it for now, because among the last 4 artifacts, they've got an elixir right there. Pandora, sitting right beside him, nods and says she's with XX, and she adds that as long as elixir stays with them, they'll be totally fine. As soon as she finishes speaking, Toon turns it over in her mind, and right away, Saiga's try to stop her makes it clear. He whips around to the guy and demands, "So this is really what happened to you?" Tan stays quiet for a beat. At last he pauses, turns to Saiga, and with a thoughtful spark in his eyes says that being a prince has planted a wild question in his mind. The ruler who seized the Domino Empire crushed the entire country and crowned himself its new leader, and now this boy can't stop wondering what that monster is really like. Tung can't even tell if this guy's hunting to murder Rain, just because she's carrying the bloodline of the past emperor. Tung decides he's nothing but a regular swordsman, then Sansui snatches his wooden sword right out from under him. Tong can only brace himself and pray that whoever just snatched power in the Domino Empire isn't a monster, but someone who will actually be reasonable. Meanwhile, in the brand new city of Domino, life is roaring nonstop, streets packed tight with people rushing around like nothing will slow them down. The rumor that the Domino house got crushed keeps ripping through the city, and everyone on the street is on edge. Will their side survive? Some whisper that the war buried countless people, while others can't help but cheer that the nobles are gone. Day after day, the city spiraled into panic. Everyone was on edge, dying to know what the new government's leaders would do next and what bombshell decisions they'd unleash. While Ukyu, the new ruler of the country, rounds up his top brass in a meeting room, he's not alone. Strange artifacts are there too, waiting to make things even bigger. Ukyu oozes pure confidence, and the 4 artifacts lined up beside him match his swagger, like they're just as sure of themselves. Okyu kicks off his speech, and the man leans in, saying that before they even start the meeting, he wants to ask everyone here about a recent loss on the battlefield. The first to answer is a white-haired man, and he's trembling with pure fear. Akyu instantly remembers him as the one who handled external relations for the Arcana Kingdom. The man whips around to the boy, terrified, and calls him Chief, saying that, just like he warned before, they'd run into a sorcerer who could wipe out tens of thousands in a blink, then admits he has no idea what to do. Akyu shoots him a look of pure disappointment, thinking, this guy had the perfect opening, but he just let it slip. Hearing that, the man bursts out in a desperate shout, demanding the leader remember, he was the rebellion's key, and his gift is impossible to replace for the new government. Akyu hangs on every word his subordinate says, then smirks and warns him, sure, you've got skills, but if you tell this to the families of the soldiers who died in this war, they're never going to calm down. The man insists he didn't mean to comfort anyone with those words, but his explanation crumbles mid-sentence. Akyu cuts in, dead serious, and demands he take responsibility for this failure. Akyu tells him he'll have to face the people he murdered, then lays out exactly what he's being charged with. After this, the crowd will drag him to a lynch, and that verdict will seal the guilty man's fate. When he hears it, terror crashes through him, and his trembling only gets worse. The man lets out a brutal scream, begging Uki for mercy, and in his head he's already trapped with those furious townspeople who will absolutely not let him off the hook after this. Yukio glares at him and snaps that if he wants mercy, he should stop talking to her and go beg his nobles, his own comrades. Right after that, the guy barks orders to 2 knights to drag the man out of the office, and they snap to attention, clamp onto his arms, and haul him out of the room. The man throws himself at the chief's feet, screaming for one more chance to atone for his guilt, but the chief doesn't even flinch. When the other nobles saw how Yukio treated their fellow comrade, horror hit them all at once, and fear started rattling them to the bone. Right as their excited whispers were heating up, Yukio slammed his palm down on the table, whack, and the other guy immediately said, "This is the exact topic I've been wanting to talk about right now." Yukio leans in with a chilling glare and demands to know why, after they've only been beaten once, their country is suddenly forced to bow and make peace with the kingdom of Arcana, and the nobles freeze, stunned and terrified by the question. Akyu snaps back with the same question again, but this time pure anger drips from every word. Why does their country just scoop up all their divine treasures and march over to offer a perfect, polite greeting? Yukio says they'll do everything they can to drag the country's living conditions higher, and if they have to, they'll even beg for forgiveness. He glares at the council he summoned and tells them, "While I'm gone, you'd better figure out how to move things forward. These plans are on you." Suddenly, one council member clocks the truth, that their leader is going to be out of the country for a while, and they see their chance to strike. But the moment Ukyu clocks the council's plans, he drops the bombshell. During his departure, one rule will be followed. UQ tells them if any council member gets creative while he's out of state, then the not person screw-up will happen on its own, like it was always meant to. If someone tries to slip out of the state without owning up, then they'll get punished for that too. Hearing that, the whole room goes numb with terror, and their leader snaps his eyes to Dane's leaf nearby, then declares the punishment, the killing of every single family of the ones who fled. He tells everyone in the room, "Own up to what you've done, because once you die, there's no undoing it," and then he hammers the point. If you're terrified of dying, you'd better be ready to fight back with the best plan you can build. Akyu glares at everyone in the hall like a warning bell, then leans in and asks with pure menace if they finally understand what he just said. After that brutal conversation, Yuuki stormed back to his chambers with the 4 treasures in tow. He starts telling them what he really thought after that recent chat. Then the guy blurts that the hall felt scorching, and somehow it looked like he was straight up messing with the internal administration or whatever. Akyu claims he's running the country, but it feels more like he's stuck playing a dull little business sim. Then the guy snaps that everything around him is trash, clearly steaming with pure disgust. The elixir, one of the 4 artifacts, slides up to UQ and pleads with its master, begging him not to lose hope. UQ tells him that just a few days ago, thousands of his men were slaughtered, and the man's disappointed reaction is way too soft for what he's really feeling. Then he snaps that he has no choice now but to march into the enemy country. Ngeko, tall, dark-haired, sat right beside him and snapped, "No matter what excuse they try, in this country the people were just simple farmers fed garbage." Njeko leans in and tells Yukio to just walk away. "Isn't this the perfect time to trust you've got it all under control?" But the boy won't say a word. Instead, Vajra, the blonde beside her, snaps into laughter at the girl's words and says, "That's just an ordinary stick," before claiming it can slide around the clouds and stretch a little, making everything she says sound like pure comedy. Njeko glares at Vajra like a storm and strides right up to her, and you can tell from the second they lock eyes, these two girls absolutely don't like each other. Ongikayo spits out a chilling threat, she's a spear, and then she smirks and says small tools like Vajra really are exactly as big as they claim, just as petty as they seem. Varja just chuckles quietly and shoots back, "Sure, it's big on the outside, but Njeko's caliber is tiny." The girl steps in, challenges Varha about what she just said, and snaps that she's a blunt knife. Then Varha fires back that when Gekko's pettiness meets her size, it's just her kind of smallness. The girls are about to explode into a full-on brawl, but Yukio darts in, breaks it up, and snaps at both of them to stop fighting. Those words instantly hook the cheerful elixir, and it bursts into a joyful laugh, saying Yukio nailed his wording perfectly, because that's exactly what makes Yukio their master. Elixir glances at the girls and tells them, straight from the heart, that they both know exactly how they can be useful to the guy. Elixir grins and strides up, asking Ukko if this doesn't make him smile, and Ukko just sighs that the truth couldn't be farther away, because Elixir isn't missing a thing. The boy snaps his gaze to the girls and tells them to rein in their wild passion, right now, and while Angekayo tries to argue against Elixir, he cuts her off mid-sentence. He tells them our master is about to march straight into enemy territory, so these artifacts need to stop bickering and finally team up. Angekayo glares at Vajra and tells him that the girl better thank Elixir for stepping in and saving the day in their fight. Vajra snaps back with arrogant confidence that the very same thing can be said about Njeko. Yukio hangs his head and blurts that he only wishes Elixir had shut the girls down way earlier. Then Elixir breaks into loud, happy laughter at the sound of it. He tells them it's great that Yukio's ready to die for their country, but he insists it's still not time for their master to sacrifice himself. Right then Dane's leaf cuts into the conversation, and the girl snaps that her master still has one thing he has to make happen, his real, true desire. Ukko grins with teeth-baring menace, swears he fully agrees with her, and makes it clear he's nowhere near ready to bow his head to his enemies. Okia still remembers that brutal day when the city was drenched in death, and he and his artifacts huddled before the tablet, trapped in a mound of rubble as rain hammered down. A decree on the tablet announced that His Excellency ordered the city of traitors to be punished for refusing to turn back to the divine pleasures, so when Ukko read it, he couldn't even process that the authorities had slaughtered everyone living there. Then Ukko, seething with hate at what those monsters had done, swore they'd never escape justice, and on that fateful day, he vowed to erase every drop of the Emperor's blood from this world, even if it cost him his life. Meanwhile, trouble is brewing again in Caputo territory. Those house leaders crowd the city wall, staring in horror at the crater Cubi's attack carved into the ground. The Caputo family's head leans in and says it feels like the wait is finally over, like someone's here at last, and the Arcana king nods, agreeing with a grim certainty. As the Caputo family's head stares the king down, he spits out this promise. Once their enemies lay eyes on this scar of destruction, they'll be crushed with no hope left of fighting the Arcana kingdom. Chief Caputo lines in and flat out insists. He's sure their enemies will keep brawling no matter what gets thrown at them. The king of Arcana claims he gets exactly what the head of the house is trying to say, then basically shrugs off royal dignity and says tradition means nothing when those real interests come knocking. The king snarls that if these people plan to wreck his kingdom, then forget the little show, because just then someone crashes through the city gates. The king declares, if I decide you lack integrity, you'll owe me reparations, and then you're going home. And even the knights posted on the wall lean in, hanging on every word. With total confidence, the man declares that no matter what, they've got to shut down this brutal war first. Right then, a carriage rumbled into Caputo's domain, packed with Ukko and his precious artifacts. It screeched to a stop, and everyone spilled out onto the street. They stride in with full confidence toward Caputo's mansion, ready to kick off the negotiations. After a while, they finally step into Caputo's mansion and head straight for the guest room. One of the knights stays right beside them the whole time. The second the door slams shut behind him, he drops onto the guy and then onto the couch, and his magical artifacts instantly fizzle into plain, ordinary things that cling to him like nothing happened. Ukko just sits there, waiting for someone to finally come talk. Outside the room where the Empire's new head takes command, a cluster of hooded figures waits in silence, their faces hidden from the world. Meanwhile, Nur lounges with a cocktail in hand, quizzing his subordinates. Are they good, and is everything running exactly as planned? One of them tells him not to worry, and swears the sorcerer's hut is sitting right at Caputo's residence. And he adds this, those bandits we hired are already charging toward her. He even claims there's just one tiny detail, and he's still reeling from how Acrylic, Pandora, and Rain were all crammed together in the same room. The guy drops the bomb that Lady Rain is hiding in this hut too, while the unsuspecting heroes are still in Cubi's place, laughing and chatting like nothing's about to go down. The mercenary snaps that the bandits never got orders to lock down the Rain, so he drills in and sends his own elites to handle it. Nure barks an order to the mercenary to keep the girl safe and free from injuries, and the mercenary immediately bows, promising that he'll handle it. Nur sat there sipping his iced drink and said the heirs of 4 noble houses are trapped right in this hut too, and he has no idea what he's supposed to do with them. The nobleman smirks like trouble and snaps for his mercenaries to wipe them out. Then he grins and promises them they'll get paid and stay free as long as Rain is still alive. The mercenary nods, saying he understands, and Nuris's face twists into a sharper, uglier grin. Then he spits out that if the heirs had backed him, he would have let them live. And the nobleman can't forget it. Those rebels vanished out of nowhere, and then the prophecy hits. Not just the sorcerer, but every single heir is going to die. Nure fears that every mistake will only crank the war up even higher, like the universe is waiting to unleash whatever comes next. Darina knows this. If it looks like the market is finally in his hands, then after the war, they'll have no choice but to crown him with a position everyone respects. Nure also admits that his biggest blunder was teaming up with the rebels, Ukyu, and trusting his artifacts with them. The nobleman knows one thing for sure. If the king and the heads of the 4 noble houses ignore him, they'll absolutely regret it. Nure can't stop thinking that once they admit his proposal was right, he'll be dying to see how they'll crawl back and beg for forgiveness, while the nobleman, in the middle of it all, smirks nastily. He whips around to the mercenary and demands to know if the heirs of the 4 noble houses showed up with their escort. The mercenary snaps back. The hut holds Rain's adoptive father and the very owner of Pandora, but not a single other hero is anywhere. Nur says that from what he's heard, even if Pandora's owner is on their deathbed, they could still slaughter another 100 people. He remembers the holy sword really is just as terrifying as they claimed, but here's the catch. He's only one person, and it won't magically fix everything, and I've seen it firsthand. A sorcerer can't cast his spells whenever he wants. The nobleman barks at the mercenary to order the bandits to wipe out every hero, then dump them somewhere, and the mercenary nods, promising it'll all be handled. Nure grins like he's hiding a secret and says, with total confidence, that everything will play out exactly his way. He grins and declares this war won't stop until every last rebel is wiped out. Meanwhile, at Caputo's mansion, 3 mercenaries are posted outside the room where Yukio sits, and one of them sneers that they don't need to kill him, just tie him up. Right when the three are about to step inside, the door yanks itself open, and the mercenary right next to it gets flung aside like it's got a mind of its own. Akyu bursts out of the room with a spear in one hand and a dagger in the other, and the boy straight up asks if they're here to kill the revolutionary, like he doesn't already know the answer. Akyu lunges in and drives both the dagger and the spear into a mercenary's chest at once, yanking his blood away like a drain. Yukio smugly tells them, "You'll have to pull off the exact same stunt again, but 100 years from now."